Well, good evening, everybody out there on the internet, and how are you doing tonight? It has been talked about now for months. It has been campaigned over. The ground has been trod. People have been reached out to. Speeches have been given. Mailers have been mailed. Flyers have been flied. TV advertising has been TV advertising. Pancakes have been flipped. Fairs have been visited. And now we are down to it the night of the 2024 Republican Caucus in Iowa. My name is Brian Trippett. I'm the Front Porch Conservative. We have a fantastic panel of folks here tonight. We're going to be hanging out together, watching the results come in. Can't wait to see all of y'all out there. So if you are on YouTube, if you're on Rumble, you're on Twitter, please feel free to send out a message to your friends. Tell them to come on in. We're going to be talking about all kinds of different things. And right now, the caucus is actually getting underway out in Iowa. So while we're waiting for results to come in, we're going to be joined by a fabulous panel of guests. Some are already here. Some are coming in. Going to be a really good time tonight. We're going to do our best to make this fun and entertaining for everybody. And this is going to be a really good event. This is the first time we've ever done something like this on the Electronic Front Porch. I will promise you this much, though we may not be as slick and tech as all other places, either on cable TV or around the interwebs, we are honest folks who give an honest take. And there's going to be good conversation had by everybody. So, yeah, let's get this party started. I'll start dropping the volume on the music. We're going to start bringing some people in. And for those of you who've been on live streams with me before, as we've covered political events, we'll start off by introducing my erstwhile partner in crime. Why he still hangs around with me, I don't know. I think he's risking his reputation every time he does it. I give you the inestimable Reuben Christopher Haynes. Reuben, how you doing tonight?
Very good. Very glad to be here.
So good to see you. And it's been a little while since we've had this gentleman on the Electronic Front Porch, but we're always glad to have him here. He's welcome anytime he wants to come on. Again, I think he's really risking his reputation by showing up. He is known far and wide as probably one of the sharpest, most insightful commentators in social media today, especially in the area of politics and political philosophy. He is the one and only Christian Watson. Christian, welcome back to the Front Porch.
Well, you are too nice with your introduction, seriously, but I appreciate it.
Well, you know, I tell my guests all the time, I may not be able to pay you in fig Newtons and scotch on a regular basis, but I'll at least give you one good intro so that you're always going to have that when you come on. It's good to see you, sir. How you doing?
I'm all right. How are you? You're very, very nice, and I appreciate that. And I tell you this, I will admit this, I've become a fan of yours, even more so than I was before. I watch your Front Porch Brunch every Saturday. I follow your tweets regularly. I think you are, and I'm not trying to blow smoke, but I think you are one of the most compelling rising stars on the sort of internet politics scene. And you remind me a lot, really, of Rush Limbaugh. A heck of a lot of Rush Limbaugh.
Wow.
Absolutely. I mean that. So I think you should keep pushing on and just keep doing what you're doing because it's really inspiring, sincerely.
Well, I thank you very much. And all of that is very humbling. Because when I got into this, I have no formal training. I have no idea how you do a live stream. The only things that I can reference back to are talk radio, which is Rush Limbaugh, which is the late G. Gordon Liddy, among a whole host of others that are my influences. And if there's a little bit of Rush in what I'm doing, thank you very much. It's an extremely high compliment. And I've got to bring in our last panelist, who is here right now, and there will be others joining us tonight. From the Dangerous Rhetoric podcast, please welcome Mr. Brantley. Brent, how you doing tonight, brother?
Chillin', how you doing?
Good to see everybody here. So it's been talked about. It's been everything else. It's been beaten like a dead horse. It's finally here, the Iowa Caucus. It's a very interesting thing right now because now it's down to who's showing up and what are the expectations. And I want to get your guys' take first on the question of expectation. And Reuben, I'll start this with you. Then Christian, come on in after him. And Brent, I'll let you finish it up. There is much made right now, and I'll throw this up on the screen for everybody to look at. The last set of polls have now officially come out for the Iowa Caucus, and every last one of them, for right or wrong, shows a dominant lead by the former president, Trump. And the question now becomes who finishes second, third, and fourth. And if anybody around here has followed politics for any amount of time, all of you gentlemen know, and everybody who's watching knows, that this comes down to two things: enthusiasm and ground game. The enthusiasm is who's got the momentum, and the question is ground game, who can get their people out to the polls. Now, what complicates tonight's Iowa caucus, perhaps more than anything else, is one of the most miserable pieces of weather that's hit Iowa for a caucus in years. We're talking, I haven't looked at the weather report, but I've heard like the temperature is like minus something, whatever, and the wind chill's like even more minus than that. So, what are the expectations? I mean, what should people realistically see coming out of this thing? Reuben, I'll throw it to you first.
Well, the first off, thank you for asking the question. But here's the most important thing: it's been already predicted already that Trump will win, and the margin, the predictions that he will win by the largest margin of any presidential candidate in history. I think Bush, W. Bush did it at 23%, and they're predicting 28% above the number two. So that's possibly there. If the weather stays, it's all about, like you said, ground game and who's putting out there. I want to know who's going to be number two and number three. Haley has had her failings right now because of what she's been going on. She's like Hillary 2.0. And then you have Vivek, who's right now trending on Twitter as Obama 2.0 for what he's been saying. He's doing a lot of saying the same lines, changing them a bit, as Obama said when he's on his rise. And that is troubling to a lot of people. It's trending right now. So who knows what happens, how 2 and 3. And then DeSantis, who knows? I don't really know what's going on. It's just, it's a lot of the talk with him, dropping out. And after tonight, who knows? So if it get 2, 3, 4, it'd be very, very important. But that's what's going on here. But I think Trump, of course. But again, I don't know 2, 3, 4. I would like to see Vivek as 2, and then I really don't. But even though I don't trust him now because of what's going on, but again, we'll see what happens.
Christian, I'll throw it over to you, and just to let you know, everyone here on this panel knows that you are a very strong proponent of Vivek, and we respect all of you for it. So it's not like anyone's trying to gang up on you here. So just I want to put that out there from the start. But I know you're quite capable of defending yourself and the candidate whom you support. But what about that? I mean, a lot of people have looked at what happened over the past 48 hours and have said, what the heck were you doing? So, I mean, and not that you're here or even required to defend his actions, but I would just like a take. What do you think was going on, and what do you think is the expectation for Vivek coming out of Iowa tonight?
Yeah, so I'll be the first person to say that I think that photo op was perhaps not really in good taste. I think that photo op did not do him any favors with Donald Trump. We understand how Donald Trump's ego is. It's very fragile. I'm just being being blunt. I'm not saying anything negative. I was a person who cried tears of joy when Trump won in 2016. Literally, I was up that night and I was crying tears of joy. So I recognize the man for his flaws, though. He has a very fragile ego, and even the slightest thing that he could perceive as a slight will be held against you. We've seen this happen time and again. But having said that, I think that the point he was trying to convey is an interesting one that everyone should chew on, because we should really look at how Trump has been treated by the legal infrastructure and the media infrastructure and the social infrastructure in our country, especially over this past half year, where we've seen now 2 illegitimate ballot purgings, where he was literally purged from the ballot, in one instance by bureaucratic fiat, and the other instance by judicial fiat. Both that are outside of the bounds of the law, that rely on novel legal theories that are obviously bunk and nonsense and have no grounding in American common law, but have grounding instead in the European interpretation of American common law. But well, that's a different story for a different day. And so then we see, of course, the other stuff with Fani Willis and with the prosecutor in New York, and then how things are just concocted and trumped up. So given the system's repeated attempts to bring him down, one would perhaps be able to reasonably say that maybe going into an election year where the stakes are even higher for the folks that wish to keep him off, we should reconsider. And maybe if he does manage to get convicted this election year, which is totally and utterly plausible, and he manages to go to jail, which is also plausible, even if he appeals his cases, appeals take a long time, then we should still realize that there may still be a better option that might be able not only to help Trump afterwards, but to address the system that is attacking him afterwards as well, so that this doesn't happen again. But having said that, there's a better way to say that, and I think that Vivek's tactic of going around and saying that I'm going to be the one to save Trump kind of reflects a problem in American politics that a lot of people aren't really willing to break out of. And it's the problem of personalities, right? So many people in American politics refuse to see beyond the candidate, refuse to see beyond the personality, their favorite influencer or whatever, and actually see the phenomenon that underpins the issues we're talking about. A lot of folks will obsess over what candidate X or candidate Y said instead of actually understanding the significance of what they're talking about. I think the significance of this Trump-Vivek feud is a few things. Number one, the issue of personality, which is a very big thing. Is it more important to be loyal to two men to solve the issues of our country, or one man when we are a country of 330 plus million people? That seems ridiculous to me. And in any other era in American history, any other era, let's look at the founding generation, the Whiskey Rebellion. What was that? That was when a bunch of Americans in early America said, we will not pay a tax on whiskey. What did they do? They went to the tax collector's house. They embarrassed him, did a bunch of things that I don't advocate for to embarrass him. Washington comes out with his men, points bayonets at them and says, you will pay. They stand there peacefully. They refuse to pay. 2 administrations later, under Jefferson, the taxes are repealed. Those are the people that didn't care about a president or personality. They had their rights. They knew how to exercise their rights, and the government had no choice but to let them, because it was known back then that government is powered by consent. But today it's all about, what is Trump going to do for us? What will Vivek do for us? I'm getting tired of it. No, it's not about what they would do for us. It's about what you will do for the country, right? It's about what you will do for your society. It's about what you will do for your nation. So I don't expect Vivek to be a savior. I don't expect Trump to be a savior. In fact, I'm actually quite disappointed in Trump on many cases. I'm not entirely sure he has a serious mindset on defeating the administrative state. Talking about building some fancy building for the FBI. Jesus Christ, come on. No, that's not going to fix anything. So that's my rant. I'll flesh out my thoughts later, but I want to give others time to just talk. So that's what.
No, that's fine. I mean, we're going to be here for a while tonight because it's going to take. We'll get into the process of how the votes are going to get counted. But Brent, I'll throw it over to you. What are you looking for tonight as far as like who's doing what and what are they going to come out of it with?
Well, I'm really curious to see how Vivek performs. Vivek, to me, it represents like the truth candidate. He's like the guy that like says the obvious but controversially true things and does it well. Tulsi Gabbard did this before, and she pulled around similar single digit percentages, and she was my favorite candidate in the previous time around. But I'm curious to see what he does. I'm curious to see how, because really like polling kind of like gives you an idea if it's accurate, but people change their mind. People are fickle. There is this weather, wild card, because really I think the weather probably hurts Donald Trump because, again, he's going to have the most popular support. So there's probably going to be people who may be willing to just stay home, figuring, Trump's got it in the bag. Everybody loves Trump. Like, I don't need to be there, to give my support, whatever. So I think the weather will probably hurt him the most. But it'll benefit, it can benefit candidates if their caucus goers are, rabid in their support. And I think Vivek probably has that. And I think Trump has that more than DeSantis and Haley. Now there may be some shenanigans afoot with, Haley and DeSantis supporters, who knows, but I don't know if that's going to be enough to overcome the, raw sort of viral, intense support that people like Christian, just exhibited. If you can imagine caucus goers having the same level of interest and support for their candidate, they're going to get out there. If it's just a little bad weather, especially Iowans, they're used to some snow, whatever. They've got chains on their tires. They've got diesel, vehicles. Yep. They're ready to go. So I think it's going to be interesting. I think Donald Trump will probably come out above 50%. I'd love to see him above 55%. That would sort of send a signal that my suspicion that he is the guy is correct. I like what Vivek says. Generally, I'm a little curious about some of the shenanigans he was involved in with his pharmaceutical company, Roivant. I watched a 17-minute video from this bro yesterday. I put it on Twitter, and he was very critical of the company, the way that it fundraises, its business practices, et cetera, et cetera. So that I thought was interesting. And I hadn't actually seen Vivek address, I hadn't heard the claims myself previous to that. And I hadn't seen any discussion of it. And included in that was a video of Vivek talking up this pharmaceutical product that he had a strong suspicion was a failure at the time, but was still talking it up to gather investment capital off of. And he was talking it up in a way that struck me as similar to how he talks to voters. And so my spider sense started tingling, and I don't know. So we'll see. I'm very curious. I do like what Vivek says, and Donald Trump is a flawed candidate. Like he's not the best option for sure. He's brutish. He's a raging narcissist with a fragile ego. But he has the popular support, and that is the sort of elephant in the room. He's got the support of the middle class widely. He hurts with women. I think women voted against him both elections 60-40-ish. But he's rising with all the minorities across the board, especially the Latino vote, and especially with legal immigrants to the country. They're big fans of his policies because he's a little bit more stringent on border control. So we'll have to wait and see, but I think he's going to come out big winner. And I don't think Haley is going to really, unless they somehow, have her come up. It's not that, in my opinion, it's not that hard to beat Ron DeSantis because he's just sort of a lackluster candidate who doesn't have the charismatic gravitas to enter into the presidential arena. He's just not at that level. Great governor, not going to make it as a president. Nikki Haley is a Democrat, and I'm shocked that I have to say that as if it's what?
Great secret, yeah.
It's obvious. Look at her poly positions, look at her history. She's never met a war she didn't like.
Amen to that.
She was very infamous not too long ago for wanting to have everybody's social media accounts basically doxed, tied to your real name, no more anonymous comments, which is just so antithetical to the American spirit and open market. And so I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what happens. Chris Christie, bye. I thought he was going to hang around. He just a few days ago, he was spending millions of dollars. 2 weeks ago, I was reading a story about him spending $7 million on ad buys and promising to stay in post New Hampshire because he wanted to see what his numbers were. He wanted to hit his numbers. And if he hit his numbers, then he would stay in. But if he didn't hit the numbers, then he'd fall out. But it seemed like something happened there at the last minute. And for some reason, he decided to drop out. If there was a phone call, who knows? But previous to that, previous to what happened, he said he was going to stay in. So,
yeah, and I agree with every bit of that. I want to throw something up on the screen and from one of the folks out on the YouTube site, and I acknowledge Trump's many flaws. I'm not voting for him because he's coming to Sunday dinner. I'm voting for him as a president. And the best way I know how to describe the feeling of Trump voters, and I'm sure all of you know this story. It was the height of the Civil War. The Union Army was just getting their rear end handed to them. And out of the West comes news that Ulysses Grant had forced the South into unconditional surrender at Vicksburg. And when Lincoln heard that, he turned to one of his aides and said, "Go get me Grant. I've just found my new commander of the Northern Army." Well, the aide looked very nervous and said, "Well, Mr. President, you should be made aware Grant is reputed to drink." And he said, "Well, I don't care what he's drinking. Go get a barrel of it and send it to every general I've got. But in the meanwhile, go get me Grant. The man knows how to fight." And I think to a lot of people in America, that's how they view Trump. Imperfect? Absolutely. Egomaniac? More than likely. Willing to mix it up with people who need to have it mixed up with or should have had a fight given to him a long time ago? Absolutely. To bounce off some stuff that some of what you gentlemen have said, talking about the weather, this is from AccuWeather. It's currently 1 degree in Iowa City. with a wind chill of -17. And keep in mind, these people are they're gonna go out and caucus tonight. So just to give you some ideas, going back to a question about expectation, and I ran this stat on Saturday on my live stream. Everyone's talking about, Trump's got to win by this number, or whoever's going to win the caucus got to win by this number, this number, this number. Here's the reality of the situation, and I want to throw this up on the screen. These are the historical markers that govern how well you really do in the Iowa caucus. The highest percentage of vote share that anybody's ever gotten in a crowded GOP field is 41%. The largest margin of victory, and this is the one that blows my mind, this goes all the way back to when the Republicans started doing the caucus in Iowa in 1976, 12%. And that was almost 40 years ago. So, don't get me wrong, it's a whole different era of American politics, and I get that. But just to let everybody know, if you're wondering, what is historic tonight? I will respectfully submit to my audience and anybody who watches this live stream down the line, this is what we're talking about right here. And I got, just for full disclosure, I got these numbers off of Wikipedia, which had a running tally of everything. So it's going to be a really interesting night, really interesting. And this is going to be fascinating to watch. I would like your guys' thoughts about Ron DeSantis. And Christian, I'll start this off with you, and then we can throw it around the board. Here's a candidate, and I say that, let me set this up this way. I've said before, and I'll say again, regardless of what happens in 2024, Trump wins, Trump loses, Biden wins, whatever, there is coming an ideological, but more particularly a generational fight inside the Republican Party. And a lot of people were looking to Ron DeSantis to be that next step past Trump. In other words, he's the guy who would be America first. He's the guy who would pick up the mantle and go with it. He gets into this race, and many argued it was ill-advised. For the record, I was one of them. And talk about the death of 1,000 cuts. The worst part is the cuts are self-inflicted. Regardless of what happens tonight in Iowa, and Christian, you can start this one off. What happens to Ron DeSantis, not just in this campaign, but let's just say intermediate term, long term politically? Where's he at when all the dust is settled on the 2024 campaign?
Well, he has injured his prospects for the future at least the short-term future. In the long-term future, I'm not Nostradamus, and I won't be a determinist, because it's evident to me that there are various candidates that have injured their prospects in the short-term future, but in the long-term future, once again, become favorable to the populace at large. Look at Ted Cruz, for example, who was one of the biggest anti-Trump, never Trump voices, and now he's one of Trump's best friends. And possibly, I would even dare say, next election cycle may very well have a chance at the GOP nomination in the post-Trump era, given how slick he is and given how much he's accumulated a lot of popularity amongst the GOP base. But that's a different story, different day. Rand Paul is the exact same way. So, but short term, DeSantis has absolutely injured his chances. I think that he has put a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth. And I think that a lot of his future is going to be dictated by how hard Trump decides to criticize him once he drops out after Iowa, because he will. He's not going to get more than third place in this race tonight. I'm positive about it almost. I might be wrong, but I don't think so. So when he drops out, we'll see how hard Trump criticizes him. If he takes a light touch, maybe DeSantis will be okay. But still, MAGA remembers, people remember. So I'm not so certain. But what I do know is this. This is a little bit of a deeper issue here. The idea that Ron DeSantis was the anointed one to take the mantle from Trump and go out and conquer the globalist or whatever. It's thinking like this that really, really, really bothers me. It's thinking like this that bothers me because it's totally a media construct. What the mainstream media does is all part of manufacturing consent and all this kind of stuff. What they will do is they will install archetypes into people's heads, notions, vain fascinations, I call them. They'll plant these seeds, and they'll look at any figure in the political landscape, and the one that seems the most superficially plausible, they will advocate him. This is what happened with Jeb Bush, for example. They said, oh, well, he has a legacy name. He was a great governor, all this kind of stuff. Conservatives will love Jeb Bush. Well, the problem was Jeb Bush had no charisma, and when it came down to it, he existed in an era where a lot of Americans were getting tired of the same old establishmentarian politics that had been happening for decades, and they decided to reject that, and therefore he was the arrival. Well, Ron DeSantis is another media construct that reflects this same old establishmentarian sort of archetype of wanting to be rebellious, but within the confines of the system. You see, Ron DeSantis is not someone who was going to go in and break glass in Washington. He was someone who was as rebellious as the Overton window at that point in time allowed him to be in Florida, which allowed him to achieve gravitas and status. And as we understand, that status itself is a vain metric used by the old world to imprison the minds of men to mediocre concepts. Well, status is now being used as a vain metric by the institutions of the new world, the media, which are really old world, to enslave the minds of political observers to vain concepts. And one of that is the media construct that this person that the media anoints 9 months before the race is the one that actually needs to be the one out front. He was never going to be the favorite of the grassroots. He was always going to be the favorite of those who couldn't think beyond what the media was propping up 9 months before the election like they always do. So personally, I'm not surprised this is happening to him. I've never liked Ron DeSantis, even though he had some victories in Florida. Great for him, great for Florida. I don't think he's a compelling speaker. I don't think that he is someone who has a lot of good ideas. I don't think that he's someone that is philosophically or morally convicted. In fact, look at what happened when he was asked by Tucker Carlson as he was on Ukraine. What did he say? At first, he was very much anti-interventionist, but then someone gave him a call and he stepped back from that stance. Well, guess what? I don't want an invertebrate politician. I want a politician that actually has a spine, has moral conviction, and knows what he believes, and is not going to be directed by anyone, whether it be his wife, Casey, who is going to run for governor of Florida, it's theorized, or whether it be some rich, well-heeled donor that actually wants him to say X, Y, Z on whatever given day. No, that era is dead. That era of American politics is dead. It's been dead for the past 6-7 years. And thankfully it's dead, because that is absolutely anathema to the kind of spirit our founders wanted us as a populace to embody when we select our government officials. Popular sovereignty and consent of the governed only exist and are only compelling and are only proper when people have the knowledge to make these decisions. And what is left done? The left has hijacked the idea of consent to permit a bunch of moral degeneracy, a bunch of moral catastrophes, whether it be the idea of a man using his consent to become a woman, one of the greatest lies of our current century, to then push forward a new political era. Consent, as our founders theorized it, had nothing to do with breaking outside of the bounds of what is morally acceptable. It had everything to do with people taking their reason and using it to make informed decisions with their consent. But a populace of sheep that believe whatever the government tells them can't really consent to anything because they're bound in ignorance. It's just like the algorithm of the cave, essentially. So anyway, sorry about the big rant, but essentially, Ron DeSantis was always a contract of the media. Ron DeSantis never had any grassroots love. And those who thought they loved him actually realized that they actually don't love him, because a lot of the same people funding Nikki Haley support him as well as a second choice. And Ron DeSantis, in my opinion, just goes to show us that someone who is not morally convicted and is as mealy-mouthed as possible and is so influenced by moneyed interest is not anyone who needs to be anywhere near the White House, because they are compromised. That's all I got to say.
Absolutely. Brent, what about you? What do you think about DeSantis short, mid, and long term?
Short term, I think he's done. Mid and long, I don't really know. Where does he go from here? Again, I sort of just feel like he had this opportunity here that was totally just, hijacked by the Never Trump faction, who used him as like their vessel, just the way they're trying to like use Nikki Haley. And it's just kind of transparent. And really what let me down about DeSantis was when he got caught using the AI art in order to, falsely, associate Trump with Fauci, pictures of him like kissing Fauci, AI generated images intermixed with real images of Trump, and like the caption, the real Donald Trump, across the top of the screen in one of the attack ads. Gets caught using the AI art, and the campaign staff like doesn't even, mea culpa, like are bad, like they just, they defend it actually and say that it's, an artistic license, that it's legitimate, political speech, yada, yada, yada. That was the end of my moment when I was interested in DeSantis as a candidate. I was like, well, if you're going to justify lying in your political campaign stuff, I'm not interested. And then also, Christian mentioned Karl Rove whispering in his ear. Those of us that are old enough to remember Karl Rove, famously George W. Bush's puppet master, the architect of, the several post 9/11 bombing campaigns and invasions and those kind of things. So this is the kind of people that were sort of positioning themselves behind DeSantis. So immediately I was just like no longer interested. If he comes back in the future, it would not surprise me to see these same people, behind him pulling the strings. And this is the problem we have in the Republican Party. There is an actual conservative base, and then there are the establishment, the Mitch McConnells, the Lindsey Grahams, the two-faced rhinos, the Liz Cheneys that are just there to occupy the space and keep an actual conservative from being able to influence public policy.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens with Mr. DeSantis. This is the first time hearing Casey DeSantis might run for governor. That doesn't surprise me.
That's
She's
the
got
theory. I don't know that for sure, but that's the theory a lot of people have. It could be bunk, but given how big of a force she's been in his campaign so far, and getting him to run for president in the first place, which we do know is the truth, maybe it's not bunk. Maybe she really wants to become a political figure.
She's got more stage presence than he does.
She does, and I think she's talented too. Now, again, if his career goes down, will her prospect also go down? Most likely, I think so. I wouldn't see why it wouldn't.
Good point. Reuben, I'll throw it up to you.
Well, again, Christian, fantastic. I can't. That's fantastic. What you said was just on point. Brentley, of course. So here's the bottom line. Ron DeSantis is damaged. He is now completely damaged. He had good fare coming in when he beat Gillum, and his battle against Disney, exposing that corruption and exposing the corruption that was going on in the state with the businesses down there was important. And he was supposed to be, I thought, a front runner for 2028. But then you have Lady Macbeth of Florida, his wife, Casey, whispering in his ear, and you have the establishment saying, okay, we don't like Trump. We can't control him. So let's control Ron. And that right there says he's a puppet of his wife. If she wants to be governor, so be it. Go be governor of Florida if you want to do it. But do it on your own merit. And again, he has really damaged his brand. After this, you'll see it. I think he'll come out fourth tonight. I really think so. And he should just drop out, go back to Florida, and take care of what needs to get done there. Long term, no, it's damaged because of this. People like Christian, people like you, Brian, Brentley, the actual people are now turning to YouTube, Rumble, X to look for their news and commentary and find out what real people want to say in an authentic way. I'm not prepared. I have no notes. I have no one telling me what to say. I'm saying what I see. And if he had waited, or if he had been a man of conviction instead of a man being controlled by his wife and the establishment, Ronna McRomney, I call her, because it's done. The establishment is over. No one's looking at ABC, CBS, NBC. No one trusts the New York Times. All these newspapers. No one knows. All the accreditation means nothing if you're not going after real news. And again, people are going to talk. It's a kitchen table issues. But when it comes to DeSantis, the real people, real Americans, won't forget what happened, what he did, and how he has damaged his brand, in my opinion, for a long term.
Yeah, very true. Very true. If you're just now stopping in, my name is Brian Trippett. I'm the Front Porch Conservative. We are joined tonight by a very lively, intelligent, and dare I say, distinguished panel. We have Reuben Christopher Haynes. We have who the gentleman below him, I affectionately refer to as the Professor, Christian Watson. We have Brentley from the Dangerous Rhetoric podcast. We're going to have some more people stopping by. We're also getting reports right now that the New York Times and CBS have already called the Iowa caucus for Trump. I can't say I'm necessarily surprised. And give me 1 second here, and I will show you how we here are going to be monitoring what's going on in Iowa tonight. So that said, we're looking at two different things. And we can thank the Iowa GOP for this because it did something pretty cool. They put together a website for the tally of the votes. But there is one interesting thing about the Iowa caucus I want to bring up, and this is a tweet from Byron York. At Iowa caucus location, the ballot is a 2-inch by 4-inch slip of paper. You write the candidate's name, you put it in a bucket, they count it in front of everybody. No electronic machines, no mail-in, no early voting, no nothing, just write and count. And Rich Barris does add one caveat to that and says, but they are using an app to report those results, much like the Democrats did in 2020. Not to say that'll happen today, but it's not all totally on paper. But the point being, there's no machinery involved in this, and I'm not even going to go down that well. But my point is this. It's a very simple process. You come in, you write down who you want to caucus for, you drop it in a bucket. Now, as far as how we're monitoring what's going on, this is the website from the Iowa GOP, and there are already some results coming in from various counties around the state. For example, up here in the Northwest, which tends to be a very conservative area of Iowa by reputation, you can see 10% of the precincts are reporting in, and obviously Trump's got a very big lead, but then again, it's very early numbers so far. Again, over on the western side of the state, small number of precincts, but again, Trump's got a very big lead. So we'll be watching all this as it comes in. Now, as far as when it gets called, we use the Decision Desk HQ website, and their numbers match almost perfectly up against Iowa GOP's numbers. So there shouldn't be much of a lag, if at all. And again, you can see Trump's already, with the very early numbers in, he's already roaring out to a pretty big lead. Now, that's going to thin out as the night goes on. But again, we've already got reports that media outlets are already calling the Iowa caucus, which to me, I mean, good grief. They just took all the suspense out because I wasn't sure who was going to win this thing, to be perfectly honest.
They're bored. They want to go home.
I guess so. Oh, hang on. Let me do this right. There we go. That's better. But yeah, this is going to be a really interesting night to watch this. I mean, for my part, I've watched a lot of these before. I've never been an active participant doing it quite like this. And it's like I told everybody who's watching us, and for everybody out there on Twitter, on YouTube, on Rumble, thank you so much for being here. And if you haven't done it yet, which I know you already have, but on the off chance you haven't, send out a tweet, send out a Gettr, send out a Truth Social, send out a Gab, tell your friends to come on in. We're just going to hang out and talk. We're going to commiserate about the campaign and other aspects of what's going on in 2024, and even just not just that, but national and world news.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Go ahead.
Who's Ryan Binkley? I saw that list and I was like, Aja Hutchinson and Ryan Binkley are on there, and I had no idea. I think I heard Hutchinson. He's a senator, right?
He's a former congressman.
But Ryan Binkley I never heard of.
Yeah, former congressman from Arkansas is Asa Hutchinson, and he's also the former governor. He was termed out, and Sarah Huckabee Sanders is now the current governor of Arkansas. But Asa, for some reason, thought it was a good idea to run for president. Asa still thinks it's a good idea to run for president.
I mean, has he been running? Like, I haven't seen anything from his campaign.
Well, that's not surprising because I haven't seen anything from Asa except his name. But, and the occasional, pot shot at somebody in the campaign. But I do want to ask this question, and let me get this pulled up while I'm trying to ask this. It's quite obvious what's going to happen in Iowa tonight. The only question is the order of finish. And that sort of gets to the next big test, which is about 8 days from tonight, and that's New Hampshire. And I really want to get your thoughts on this. I mean, New Hampshire, as all of you will attest to from having watched this stuff over the years, is notoriously oh, how shall I put it? Is notorious for being able to give somebody their comeuppance, because it's not often that someone comes out of the Iowa caucus and then goes on to win the New Hampshire primary. Now, and I'm trying desperately to pull these numbers up from Real Clear Politics, and maybe I can do it this way. Hang on. It's not uncommon for someone to go into New Hampshire thinking they've got the world on a string and then realize, the string just got cut. But here we go. Here's some of the latest polls coming out of New Hampshire, and this one is a whole lot tighter than Iowa. Now, there's some question about who's got the most accurate polling at this point, and some of this is going to change, especially after tonight. But, and Brent, I'll start this with you. Where does it go from here? I mean, depending upon, the order of finish coming out of Iowa, what do you think happens in 8 days in New Hampshire?
Well, I think it's going to depend here on second place. So if Haley gets the second place, she's going to get a boost, and that's going to help her going into New Hampshire. If she doesn't get the second place, that's definitely not going to help. That's the first time I saw New Hampshire. I didn't realize Haley was polling at double-digit percentages in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
That was that was surprising. I'm like, are really there that many people that are duped by Nikki Haley? Like, really? Like, that's sad. So sad. But we'll see, I guess, and if she, if DeSantis does not get at least second place, then he's probably done. And we'll see this, Haley will be the, the anti-Trump alternative within the GOP that is counting on Trump being taken out by lawfare.
True. Reuben?
Yeah, basically what David Day says here. You have Sununu, who's a rhino, and he will try to get some influence. So then New Hampshire is a wild card in a way. It's basically going to be they're going to say how small the margin between Trump and the next person is. If it's going to be, less than 20%, then they're going to start to throw up, all the it's all this stuff. It's all about that. It's all about the perception of Trump not taking taking as high as he did in Iowa. So it's always going to be about that, in my opinion. Okay,
Christian, I'll throw it down to you.
Yeah, and I was just looking at the numbers myself. Yeah, I think second place matters quite a lot tonight. Unfortunately, I really wish it didn't. It really shouldn't, because no one gets the trophy for coming in second. But that's just how that's how the public consciousness works. But unfortunately, it will matter in terms of political strategy, in terms of justifying why certain campaigns should continue to get funds from the donors backing them. And it is my hope that Nikki Haley stays far out of second place tonight, because if she does, that's going to legitimize her, and unfortunately, she will become a force to be reckoned with. I say that in air quotes because I don't believe it, but a force to be reckoned with in this campaign. And I don't really want to have to continue talking about a lady who has no charisma, who is not smart whatsoever, who I think is the embodiment of almost every single thing that's wrong with our politics, and who also just quite frankly doesn't even have any convictions. And really, that last point matters more to me. You can be dumb as a sack of bricks. If you have more convictions, I like you. But if you have no moral convictions, I don't care how smart you are. I don't care how dumb you are. You are not fit for to hold the highest office in the land. And she doesn't have moral conviction whatsoever. She can't even tell us if a man can become a woman. She can't even tell us, if what the limits on our immigration should be, because she doesn't want any. She just continues to recite the old, tired, nonsensical GOP line that we only want legal immigration. Well, no. How about we actually take a very serious look at what it means to be an immigrant? And while we take a very serious look at the impact on immigration to national sovereignty and the values the nation holds. No, I don't want more legal immigration if that means the erosion of Americans' core cultural values. No, I don't. I'd rather us have zero immigration like the Japanese if that means we get to keep our cultural values. Now, the problem is the rot is already happening from the inside. Interestingly enough, a lot of immigrants that come to this country actually hold Americans' values more closely than some native-born Americans do. Look at the Cubans in Miami, for example. A lot of them are more pro-America than some of the more native-born people here in America. So I'm not anti-immigration, but I'm very cognizant about the impacts that immigration has on the population and the population's values and so on and so forth. But Haley doesn't seem to take any of that into consideration. She just touts her old tested donor line. So I'm hoping that she does not get above 4th place tonight. That's my hope. I'm crossing my fingers for my own sanity, hopefully.
Yeah, one other comment that you could follow up on Christian says, that's the whole idea, because again, immigration is very critical. We have to have America first mentality. We have a lot of Americans here who I myself I'm looking for work. And again, what happens is, and I see this as I work in technology, a lot of H-1B visas are being sought by companies because they want the cheap labor. Again, you saw, was it Pelosi and a few others have said it, that they need the immigrants here to, pull the crops out. No. You need Americans to do it. You have Americans here already to do it, and you have the technology now to do it. But they want the cheap labor to get it done, so they can they can say that they're doing something for the immigrants. Immigrants don't just pull crops. Immigrants don't just clean toilets like they did that on The View a few years ago, and they just the establishment thinks people are just dumb. And it's insane. And I see it all the time where they have a posting somewhere that they have to say there's a job available. This is done because there's an H-1B visa. They put it out there. They already have the person. They put it up there for a certain amount of time, and then they bring that person in under H-1B. So that our immigration system has to be overhauled, which is correct on both sides are saying this. But again, remain in your country, apply. My brother married a Mexican national. They waited 7 years to bring everybody over. They went through the process. And that's what you do. You do it legally. And then once you do the process, once you follow your pledge of allegiance and you do all the tests you need to do, and those tests now, that simple test, the immigration test, when you have Americans that can't even pass that test, there's a problem with our education system, with the entire system is corrupt right now because it's trying to break down the system so that we have nothing to stand on. And it goes back to Lincoln. A house that's divided will fall. It's terrible.
Absolutely. And I'm going to go, before I give my comments, I'm going to go and bring in one of our other panelists who has just arrived from social media and his association with the Dangerous Rhetoric podcast. Please welcome Mr. Chad Manley. Chad, welcome, sir. How are you doing tonight?
Hey, everybody. I'm doing pretty well. Today was an easy day of work for me, and I've been looking forward to this all day. So happy to finally log on.
Yeah, Chad reached out to me. Brent and Daniel host what I call the Sunday Night Supper Club, discussing national and international issues. And afterwards, Chad reached out to me and said, "Hey, man, you got an extra chair open on this thing?" I was like, "Yeah, come on, dude. I'll be happy. I'll deal you into the game, dude. Come on." So, he's here. And part of why he's here, and he gave me a really good sales pitch. And that is, hey, man, there's reasons why the old man does what he does, okay? I mean, trust me. Part of why I wanted to bring him on here, he used to live out in Iowa, has a good feel for the area, has a good feel for the people. And I want to get his perspective, as someone who was at one time living locally in the Hawkeye State. Look, I'll just throw the first question off the top of my head to you, Chad. Everybody's making much about this weather. And I'm not trying to minimize it. I mean, God knows the conditions out there tonight are wretched as far as the temperature, the snow, and the everything else. But from your experience from when you lived out there, how much is that really going to affect what's going to happen tonight?
Yeah, so I was living, for background, I went to grad school in Iowa. So I was in Ames, Iowa, at Iowa State during the 2020 caucus. And that night, and I checked the weather records to make sure that I was remembering it correctly. That night, the temperature was like in the 30s or something, which wasn't that bad, but it was really windy. So the wind chill brought it down to like almost 0 or something.
Okay.
That said, I live in eastern Nebraska. So Iowa is like there. And I can tell you that after the snowstorm that we got walloped with this past weekend, I think people are looking for an excuse to get out. So I'm not convinced that the weather's really going to have that much of an impact on voter turnout. I will say though, I think, and this is pure speculation, there's no way to check this. I think that the person who's going to get hit the most tonight by voters who decided to stay home because of the weather, I think is going to be Nikki Haley.
Really?
And I say that because her voter, from just the feel that I get, this is the Chad Manley vibe test. They seem much more like marginal voters, and I say that because she is a marginal Republican. Like Christian was saying before I came in, like I don't even understand what she's doing. She's just kind of here. She's in the race to be in the race. She doesn't really want to be president, I don't think. I think she wants to be vice president. Because otherwise she would like take a shot at Trump, which I don't think she has in a serious way. And so to me, from what I've heard from some people who are leaning towards Nikki Haley, they seem like I mean, she's very pro-establishment. I guess that's what I could say. So they're very much like establishment type voters feeding into the machine, whether they realize it or not. So I think she's going to be the hardest hit by the nasty weather tonight. Although, like I said, I don't think it's really going to have that much of an impact on voter turnout. So.
Well, I tell you what, since I mentioned a moment ago that some of the major news outlets have already called Iowa, CBS, New York Times. Well, we've got the same thing here from where our standards of what we're looking at. Decision Desk has called Iowa for Trump, not necessarily shocked. And again, these numbers are very early, they're very preliminary, but take a look. You've got, like, at this point, a neck and neck race between Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis. Vivek's coming in at fourth, but this is tight so far. And again, this is really early. But I just want to put that up there by way of information. I do want to touch on something that Chad brought up, and I got to ask you guys about this, because this to me has been one of the more bizarre aspects of this primary. And I understand the why, but man, talk about a handicap. And it's this. Doesn't matter if it's Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis or Chris Christie before he got out, who the candidate is. The first rule of thumb is, okay, whoever the lead dog is, you go after him. But that's been one of the strangest aspects of this race inside the Republican Party for the nomination. Everybody knows you've got to go after Trump. Nobody will go after Trump in any kind of a concertedly, systematic, strategic sort of way. Yeah, they'll take their shot. I mean, DeSantis may be the one that I'm thinking of the most, but nobody will do it because they know that if they go after Trump, the base of the party, if they were to get the nomination, this is just my theory, and I want to get your guys' take on this. If they get the nomination, then they're done. Because Trump's people are going to be like, you messed with our dude, phooey on you. We'll have nothing to do with you. And I think, and this is, I guess, the question I'm getting to with you guys. How much does it speak to how the base of the Republican Party has changed in the last 8 years, that it's more, I mean, the common term now is MAGA or America First. But I mean, I can remember, and Reuben's probably the same way, we're comparable in age, but we can remember when the Republican Party was more like a George W. Bush kind of, free trade, and, we're going to put our military where we need to around the world, do what we got to do, and we're all about tax cuts and yada, yada, yada. Now it's more a question of, all right, we want our border secure. We don't want intervention around the world militarily. It's a very, some would call it populist. I don't think that's necessarily an unfair term. A populist sort of conservatism, as opposed to what it was many years ago. So, I mean, how much does the unwillingness of the candidates to go after Trump speak really to their understanding of how much the base of the Republican Party has changed? And Chad, I'll throw that to you for starters, since you just walked in.
I really like that question. When you were describing what the base of the Republican Party used to be, the first thing that popped into my head was that's Nikki Haley. And I think it's really interesting. It seems like Nikki Haley is running for that 2008 Republican audience, and she doesn't seem to No, I won't say that. I was going to say she doesn't seem to understand that times are changing or times are different. I don't think that's true. I think she is, and she does understand that. She's just playing the game to try to get a spot in Trump's cabinet. Sorry, how much does that speak to how much the Republican base has changed? Yeah, the change of the Republican base is something that continues to surprise me today. Typically, the model is when you run for president and you lose, whether it was the first time or whether you were seeking re-election, people want you to go away. Nobody cares about you anymore.
Right.
Like, ask Hillary Clinton, ask Mitt Romney. Nobody cares. Go away.
Right.
Trump went away, and then he came back, and now he has, less than 1% reporting, but 57% of the vote in the Iowa Caucus.
Right.
So, what's going on? It does seem like the Republican base, and I'm not I want to be clear, not judging him. I'm just sort of trying to diagnose.
Sure.
Does seem like a lot of the Republican Party has very much moved towards just a worship of Trump as just this political figure, which is really bizarre. Apparently, there is an ad or something that Trump showed yesterday with the slogan, "Then God made Trump" or something. Just I don't know, trying to appeal, trying to make a religious appeal with Trump is a really weird combination because of shall we say his personal life. Yet for some reason he always gets the Christian vote. It's really bizarre, and I understand you're voting for him to be president, not to date your daughter, but sorry, that is a really long-winded answer, and I'm totally off topic now. But no, I think the base of the Republican Party has definitely moved more towards just a worship of Trump as a political figure and as a character.
Yeah, Reuben?
Yeah, you're not wrong there. But so then my history is I grew up in a town that was Democratic. There was no such thing as a Republican. So I tended to believe I'm a rebel. I tended to disagree with everything the Democratic Party did, but I'm not a Republican. So I voted for Perot twice, and I always, or actually I say I voted for Perot twice so I could vote against somebody. So every election I voted started in 1988 on, I voted against the person I didn't want. So I voted for somebody else. But then when Perot ran, I voted for him. And I did not vote for Trump in 2016 because, again, I thought he was too Democratic, and I thought he was a lifelong Democrat. But I understand what he did. He basically said, "Well, where do my values best follow?" And then he followed on the Republican side. And then you're correct in the sense that the 2008 Republican was more big business. So it's basically big government, big business. And I believed until 2021, January 6th, that there was a legitimate two-party system.
Right.
And now I know it's not. It's a one-party establishment uniparty, and it's either you're going to be basically be behind big business or big government. And you have Hollywood, you have government, big tech, you have big pharma, you have all this stuff going on. That is what is it. That's one side. And the other side, they call it populist, is the regular people. And it's funny that a billionaire is now considered a regular person. And is he narcissist? Yes. Does he think much of himself? Yes. But again, I go to the following. The content of a man's character is, you don't look at what he says, look what he does, But look at how he treats his children, and look how his family unit is. And that's where I go and saying, okay, if you just basically say, okay, here's Donald Trump, here's his family, and here is his children, and you look at Biden, and here is his children, who would you want to have over at your house? Somebody who you can relate to, and Trump is more relatable in that regard. Biden is not. And then again, you have Haley, who is just, like I said, stands up there and just like doesn't answer any questions. And then you have Vivek as a rebel coming out as a business guy who sees what's going on here and is pushing everything that's going out there regarding what has to be done and the movement forward. It's a more populist movement. You see how Vivek ran his campaign. He's had these town halls every single day in Iowa. When he speaks, he speaks to the media as Trump does. You're saying it wrong. You're going to trap me. I'm not going to fall for this anymore. And he's very, very passionate when he says it. DeSantis and Haley are just establishment, and that's how the Republican Party has changed. It has changed from that cigar chomping, big boy kind of thing to a kitchen table issue. And that is what Obama did when he ran. He made it more about the grassroots and about what you're going to do for your family. And it's been flipped. And now the media is running scared. And it's going to, again, the Republican Party, they're going to basically say, they're going to label every single Republican as a MAGA Republican. And that's basically the new Yahtzee term that they're going to basically say out there, MAGA, 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 over and over again. And it's all about, he's going to do this, he's going to do that, he's going to lock you up, he's going to throw you away, even though you know it's already happening right now if you see reports that are coming out. But the Republican Party has changed completely. It's more, I would say, about the individual. We need jobs here. We want to bring everything back, everything in the global aspect. Started back with Clinton and what he did. It's got to come back. We need to we can be stronger here. So that's how the Republican Party has changed. It can be more about America first, Americans first. I don't care what color you are, what sex you are, what you believe in. I want every single American to be prosperous and successful.
Absolutely. Christian, you are a student of not just politics, but political philosophy. I mean, when I came across you and found out that your hero is Buckley, I was like, oh, no, this is a cat I can get down with. But I mean, you've studied this kind of stuff. You've looked at this stuff for years. Is there, and again, if I'm wrong, put me in my place. Am I wrong in my supposition that the base of the Republican Party has changed? In other words, the kind of republicanism that George W. Bush, Nikki Haley, Mitch McConnell, that wing of the party has known and enjoyed for a good 2-3 decades, you could argue. And now they're trying to navigate through a group of people, and they're like, how did all these people get into my party anyway? Kind of like Sinatra's old line. It's like, how did all these people get in my room? I mean, are we seeing that kind of a sea change politically, and not just among the Republicans? You could make an argument there's a populist strain that's running among the Democrats with Bernie and Tulsi Gabbard, and et cetera. So, I mean, what do you think about all this?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. So I want to contextualize this because there's a lot of good stuff being talked about, and Blue Streamer in the chat had a very good question. It's about the rise of populism in the conservative movement. So let's do a brief autopsy of the conservative movement, let's say from the late 1960s upwards till now. So in the late 1960s, you had Buckley, you had Brent Bozell Sr., you had the sort of old guard, you had people like Max Eastman, people coming from the old right in the 20s, and people coming from the anti-communist sort of McCarthyist movement in the 50s, coming together to say, okay, we need to have a vanguard that is going to defend us from the wiles of collectivism, from the wiles of communism. And so what are we going to do? We're going to start a magazine called National Review. And this is going to be the bullhorn that goes against communism, goes against collectivism. And the mission of the conservative will be primarily to bring together all these different factions within our sensibility, the Burkeans, the Jeffersonians, the religious people, the libertarians, the classical liberals, and merge them into one single faction to be a good bulwark against communism. Well, this succeeded for a while. This did quite well for a while. It culminated in the rise of Barry Goldwater, who unfortunately failed during the election, but his ideas were still had a massive impact on his protege, Ronald Reagan, who in his speech, A Time for Choosing, set him up as the sort of mainstream like a continuation of Goldwater's legacy. So Reagan gets into office, taking sort of this Goldwater anti-communist, anti-collectivist idea with him. But the problem is Reagan gets hijacked. Reagan gets hijacked by this emerging force in American politics, this sort of merger between military and financial incentives that had benefited greatly when the government nationalized our civilian industry to push forth war in World War II. And then after the post-war consensus continued to benefit when our government saw it as a necessary strategy to fight communism by installing our own puppets across the world, by funding insurgencies across the world. You need someone to make the weapons. Who benefits from that? And this is called the military-industrial complex. So Reagan, who came into office as this sort of, I'm going to cut taxes, I'm going to get the government off your back. Well, he succeeded in some senses. He cut taxes, but relative spending was not cut. And for that reason, the Reagan economic legacy has been tarnished, because you can cut taxes all you want. If you don't cut your output, then you're still going to have a terrible, perhaps even worse, fiscal state. And this is why David Stockton left the administration angrily, because Reagan just was compromised. He was compromised by the war interest. But still, the sort of consensus Reaganism, conservatism was still intact by this point. You get after Reagan, go to the 90s. What happens? You begin seeing the neoliberalization of our economic order even more so. You begin seeing NAFTA. You begin seeing all this kind of stuff happens. And you begin seeing America put up in a posture where, in the absence of communism, we have to be an extoller for ideas. We have to be representative to the world about what American ideas stand for, even more so now. So what happens exactly after this? Well, 9/11 happens. And what happens exactly after that? Authorization use of military force. And then the government is then given a full berth to go throughout the world and extol Americanism by the force of a gun. At this point, the consensus conservatism of the 60s and 50s, where was it? It was no longer the focus, because the consensus conservatism was focused on communism. Well, communism had been vanquished by the fall of the Berlin Wall. What was its focus now? There was no focus. It was captured by institutional interests. And this is when, I argue, around the 2000s, is when this so-called uniparty is born. That's what I argue. It didn't exist forever. The administrative state predates it. The administrative state as this is in the 1900s. But around the 2000s, when the so-called uniparty system is born, because you're beyond the consensus, you're beyond the conviction of the movement, and now it's all about, let's fund wars to extol Americanism, and let's go into Afghanistan and install some kind of politically democratic institution. Let's have a provisional government. Let's spread economic wealth. Let's put up their border and every kind of stuff. All that stuff fell, by the way. $2 trillion later, Afghanistan is still a war-torn country because look, it's an old saying they say in my community. You can take someone out of the hood. You can't take the hood out of someone. And very simply, there are people in the Arab world whose thinking is primitive. There are people in the Arab world who fight in the name of Allah. There are people in the Arab world who simply are hell-bent on killing people for their political aims, which is why I think that Israel is one of the great modern marvels of the Arab world relative to a lot of its neighbors, even its advanced neighbors. Hot take, I know, that's just my opinion. So then we go beyond the Bush era, where the neoliberalism, neoconservatism is the guiding force of political consideration. And right out of that, we get people like Boehner, McConnell, Pelosi, all these people who basically agree on the same thing, just have different variations to that agreement. Okay, what happens at the very end of the 2010s? The Tea Party. We get people that say, okay, we recognize that the consensus has deteriorated. We know that there are perverse financial interests pushing us towards a point where we now have the Patriot Act, we now have mass surveillance, and we're not getting safer. And America is not getting more respected due to the adventurism that has been justified under the neoconservative military-industrial complex paradigm. Therefore, we need to return back to fiscal sanity, a return back to military sanity. We need to return back to sanity in general, which is why this is when Glenn Beck became a big figure and all that kind of stuff. Well, what happened? They got compromised. The Tea Party got compromised because John Boehner, this is how deep this goes. John Boehner was the person they pushed out. Okay, but then John Boehner goes ahead, negotiates with Barack Obama, pushes debt ceiling bills, and continues to further the fiscal state of our country deteriorating. So after all of this period of compromise and consensus, and the conservative movement lacking a vision for so long. This businessman from New York, this barroom brawler called Donald Trump, comes along and says the American dream is dead. And everyone who had been pissed off, who had been angry, who had been dissatisfied by the lack of focus and vision of the conservative movement and its enslavement to higher elitist interests, say, this is our guy. And people who didn't even know they were politically inclined immediately surged into the party, and they changed the face of American politics and world politics forever. This was a domino effect that happened going all the way back to the 80s due to the fact that the conservative movement could not articulate what it believed beyond fighting communism.
Yeah.
And this is why the post-liberal movement, who I've talked to you a little bit about, Front Porch, is so big right now. Because there is a growing faction on the right. They don't care about liberty. They don't care about the individual. They instead care about the common good. They want a community-oriented government. They want a oftentimes religious or Catholic-oriented government. And they believe that because classical liberalism has failed in showing us from degeneracy in their terms, it no longer is a viable political mechanism. And those people, Claremont Institute, they use Donald Trump's presidency to justify themselves without actually understanding that Trump wasn't about any of that. Trump is about good old school Americanism. And if you try to impose a political lexicon upon Trump, you fail because he's not a political phenomenon. Trump is a social phenomenon that came into a political phenomenon created by people who were just tired of seeing their country get pillaged by the power structure.
Absolutely.
So I don't talk about Trump in political terms because he's not that. He is a true old-fashioned populist, just like Huey Long was. Huey Long was a populist as well. Yeah. He managed to take the concerns of the working class at that time and translate them into political succor to get him to win. So that's what I think. There was a shift, but it was a shift that happened due to the detachment from the conservative infrastructure, from the grassroots, and lack of a vision. That's my opinion. So sorry for the history lesson, but that's
no. That's dude.
That was
spot on. It's spot on.
Fantastic. Yeah. That's absolutely fantastic. And yeah, no, I mean, look, I tell everybody that comes on my channel, say what you will. If people want to agree, they are at liberty to agree. If they want to disagree, they're at liberty to disagree. We'll all do it civilly, but there's not a man on this panel that's just heard everything Christian Watson said and is like, to borrow what the kids are saying these days, he ain't wrong. So yeah, I mean, that was absolutely fantastic. And Brent, before I throw it over to you, and we're still waiting for more results to come in, I want to thank Mr. Dave for the $10 super chat. Thank you very much, sir. Greatly appreciated. Brent, I'll throw it over to you. I mean, what is the state of the Republican Party's base of voters? I mean, for example, and she's not political, and I'm not trying to drag her into this. Our mutual friend, Carrie Smith, she'll tell you she's not liberal. She's not conservative. She is. It depends on what issue it is. When we're talking about people who are voting today, like, for example, in Iowa, and every state in America is different, and I understand that. Every region of the country is different. But when does it get to the point that the, quote, leadership of its political party, the Republicans, either acknowledges, okay, we're not in step with the base of our party anymore, or when does it get to the point they're on their way out? And are they in the process and we just don't realize it yet?
Well, I think we're there. I think we're in the process of seeing a complete transformation of the Republican Party, kind of the way we saw a transformation of the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party used to be much more grassroots. And under Obama, like, Christian was saying, it very became a little bit more corporatist, a little more globalist, a little bit more authoritarian. And they really sort of unified their machinery such that they now have this really bizarre way of just everybody in the party automatically agrees. There's very little dissension within the Democrat Party, except the occasional outburst from Senator John Fetterman, which is always entertaining. But the Republicans have completely changed. And I think a lot of people that used to be Democrats are now Republicans, myself included. I think a lot of younger people are joining the political process. I think a lot of middle-aged people who never paid attention to a thing, went through the pandemic and had a oh my god moment, like I need to vote because elections have consequences. So I think the Republican base is definitely transformed, especially over the last 5 to 10 years. It's not your dad's Republican Party anymore. There's a lot more young dudes involved, which is great to see. And it's definitely, there's going to always be that corporatist uniparty faction, unfortunately, until there's enough general support to purge that. And it hasn't happened quite yet. And I think that happens a lot of times. I think we fail to realize that as people who are sort of like terminally online, as people who pay attention to politics and news and media and are reading the news every day, we are like years ahead of the general populace in terms of what we are aware of and, our expectations about, what should be happening because of what we know. And I think that sort of tends to skew our perception a little bit. And it leads us to confuse ourselves because we sort of see things like the way they are in the future almost compared to most people because they're just so far behind with life. They don't have the bandwidth to keep up and pay attention to, the major issues of the day until it comes crashing into their life, like when a pandemic happens and their job is like suddenly taken away. So I think a lot of people were impacted by that. And I think it woke a lot of people up. And another thing people forget about politics is that like roughly like only 40 to like 50% of the American population like actively votes. So that's like how many people are paying enough attention to actively like go out and like do the thing. There's a great sleeping swath of the American public that, could just decide to get involved, or you could just have new chunks, like we could go from a populace where we're having 40 to 50% of the people vote to having 60 to 70% of the people vote, and that would be a huge historical change over past patterns, and things like that can happen. So I'm very curious to see what happens this year. I think it's going to be a nonstop ride to November, and I'm glad to be here and discussing it with y'all gentlemen.
Oh, I absolutely agree with you. This is going to be, I think I was making this comment. I had the pleasure of interviewing Rich Barris one time, and I said, I've heard for years, this is the most important election of our lifetime. And usually when I hear that phrase, I turn to the radio or look at the TV and go, shut up, Hannity, you twit. But this year takes on a little more significance. I'm just going to, from my gut and my heart here, I've been voting since 1992, and Lord knows I've been on the wrong side of a lot of elections as far as who won. But regardless of winners or losers, this year just feels like this one feels heavier. It really does. It feels like there's more in the balances of the scales than's been placed there in a very long time. And if y'all think I'm wrong, just like I say, you're free to look at me and go, you're a twerp too. So, but to me, it's about this election's about the sovereignty of the country. This year is about what kind of a country are we going to be going forward, because all the mulligans in the golf bag are on the scorecard. We've used them up, because now it's down to, okay, it's time to get serious here. Winston Churchill's great line, Americans will always do the right thing when they've exhausted every other possibility. Well, I think we've exhausted every other possibility. We're there. So, I mean, for each of you individually, beyond the question of politics tonight, what does the 2024 election mean to you? I mean, like I say, to me, this one's about a whole lot more than just who winds up being in the White House or what kind of fiscal policy we've got or monetary policy we've got or beyond that. It feels way more serious than that. So, Reuben, I'll throw it to you first.
Well, as I said to you before, I believe that 2024 is going to be a very close mirror to 1968. we're going to have the same type of horrors that may occur, the same type of violence that may occur. And God forbid anything bad happens to anybody, but it's looking to be that chaotic. And it is a ground game, but the thing is, things are different now because, again, we didn't have social media the way we had it then. We had a media that was much more honest in a way. But again, you're going to have people out there that are going to be just, people are hurting right now. People are hurting, and they've been hurting for a very long time. I think the pandemic did hurt a lot of people. 8 billion people, if you say, have been affected around the globe. And America, over 350 million people have been affected. No matter what you say, if you got 81 million votes or not, but Trump did get the most votes of a sitting president, and it usually goes down. His went up. His went down, and all demographics went up. And this is now an election that is determining, do you want the status quo or do you want a new path? And the status quo is the establishment, is what the Democrats have been spewing for the last 100 years. And then again, it's all part of what happened. It started happening in 2008, the Tea Party movement that got co-opted. Again, everything got co-opted by, again, the deep state and what the New World Order is trying to do, and what George is trying to do himself. But again, we have to stand up for it. So this 2024, they're going to come hard. After this, tomorrow, the Democrats are going to go really, really hard. They're already doing it right now on social media. People are basically saying it doesn't matter if Trump wins because he's going to jail. They are basically saying lock him up. That's trending again because people are terrified because they have been programmed through the hive mind, the liberal hive mind, that he's going to be locked up. And that hive mind mentality is still in the establishment Republican Party, where they are basically saying, no, we have to stay the course and be statesmen and all that stuff. And no, they're not statesmen. They are bought and paid by lobbyists. Washington is a corrupt city and a corrupt entity. It's a virus that's spreading across the world. And again, we have it right now. With the Middle East again is there's just a lot of fire, a lot of death, and a lot of corruption going on. And then no more. So 2024, this is just January 15th. So things are going to get really, really wild. That's what my opinion is going to happen. So let's be careful and be vigilant, and go on X, and thank God Elon has it now, so that we can have some honest reporting. And I hope that things go right. But be prepared for a lot of violence. And again, 1968 Chicago Democratic Convention, 2024, it's back in Chicago again. So things are going to be really wild.
Yeah, I have to admit, when I heard that the Democrats had agreed to put the convention back in Chicago, I thought, boy, you guys are rolling the dice on that one, because you got lucky in 96. But then again, 96 was a whole different animal. You had a really good economy. Bubba Clinton was, any number of different things. At that point, he and Miss Lewinsky had not had their rendezvous in the Oval Office. The country was at peace, relatively speaking, and he cruised. So Chicago, no problem. 68, however, not that I was alive when it went down, but I've read all the tales. And for anybody who enjoys political history, I recommend to you Mike Royko's book called Boss. You want a real down in front view of what happened at the convention in Chicago for the Democrats in 68, go read Mike Royko's book. It's called Boss. It's the story of Old Man Daley, not his son who was mayor in the 90s. This is the original Richard Daley. And man, you talk about a real good explanation of how and why the convention went bad for the Democrats in 1968. That is a fantastic book. So I'll recommend it to you. Chad, what about you? What does the 2024 election mean to you?
Yeah. What really kills me about sort of the Democratic vision for the country is that it is an America without the American dream. It is an America without the American spirit. You know, my Lord Brentwood is sitting in the other room, and a few months ago, he showed me a TikTok from the show 1923, where Helen Mirren is talking to a woman who's dating a farmer out in whatever state that takes place in.
Montana.
And Montana, okay. And Helen Mirren says to this woman, she's trying to explain to her what marrying a farmer is like, and she says, you know, you're gonna work so hard. She says, you will stand knee deep in mud to help a sick foal. You will dry wagons of hay out in the middle of a blizzard to cattle, because you know the cattle are going to have to be fed. You're going to work so hard, you're going to be sore all over, but you will be free in a way that nobody else can understand. And she says, now, if this is not the life for you, you need to tell the boy at once, because you can't have just the boy. You have to want the life too. And that was the spirit that America was founded on. You know, your success is out there. You got to go fight for it, and you got to go get it for yourself. That is completely antithetical to the idea of a cradle to grave welfare system.
Right.
You know, the state giving you just about everything, paying for everything, and then taxing you for it on the back end. And so the thing is, Biden might have campaigned as a moderate 4 years ago. He has certainly not governed as one. Well, let's be real. He hasn't done anything. He's Woodrow Wilson, and someone in his a lot of people in his administration are just moving his arm on the documents, right? And so, but they have made very clear the type of the vision that they have for America. They have governed very radically, and that is the vision that they have for the country. And it is just tearing the American spirit out of America. And then what are we? Yeah. We're not America anymore. We're just, I don't know what, but it doesn't feel like, it wouldn't feel like true America if there's this giant security net, and mediocrity is the only outcome.
Okay. Christian, what's 2024 mean to you?
That's a very interesting question. What does 2024 mean to me? So here's what I'll say. I have heard people, including Vivek, who is it's no secret, that's my preferred candidate, say that if we don't get it right this election, we don't have a country anymore. Well, for the very short time that I've been politically conscious, I've heard that said almost every single election season. Having said that, that claim becomes even more untenable to me when I actually zoom out and over the scope of American history, going to the past 130 plus years. And I understand the conditions that plagued generations before us. Not even 100 years ago, the vast majority of the country was living on the subsistence level, dealing with famines, dealing with all kinds of things, dealing with economic downturn in a period called the Great Depression. Not even 100 years ago, a great majority of the country's economy was militarized and nationalized to fight a war effort, and people were literally forced to ration their food. And there were advertisements coming out from the Office of Wartime Propaganda, which is literally what it was called, saying that if you ride alone in your car and you don't ride share, you're riding with Hitler. And people actually just sat down and accepted that kind of propagandization from their government, from perhaps one of the most tyrannical presidents in existence, FDR, only contended with that title with Woodrow Wilson, perhaps. who was also particularly devious. And he was actually Wilson. The thing about Wilson, he was actually very smart, very academically inclined, very, very smart. Some of his essays.
yeah.
He was very, 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 very intelligent. That's what was so scary, because he was able to conjure up abstractions to justify just clearly anti-American policies on the basis that we need to divorce ourselves from principles and we need to rely more on the social consciousness. In fact, in an essay he did on the study of administration in the 1880s, I believe, forgot exactly which year, but he basically said in that essay that the Constitution and matters of principle are now secondary to matters of administration, and those matters are more pressing for us. So let's forget the Constitution. Let's work on administration. Well, the problem is if you don't have an antecedent, you won't get a good result. Every action you do has an antecedent that follows it. Every conclusion has to have a premise. So that's what and by the way, it did have a premise. He had a premise. It just wasn't the Constitution. It was instead a Prussian-style system that he and his friends were educated over in Germany, Prussia at that time, and they took a liking to it. But anyway, when you look back throughout American history, even 130 plus years ago, we've been in worse situations. We've had worse situations in our history, in our societies, in our culture. Look at the crack epidemic of the 70s and 80s. That was so bad that basically launched the war on drugs. And it was contrary to what many leftists say. It was actually people like Chuck Rangel, people from the black community that went to Nixon and said, hey, let's actually penalize crack higher than powder because this is what's destroying communities, which is, of course, it was mistaken. It was a defect in policy, but that's actually what happens. Why you see those disparities. It's not racism. It was preferential due to black leaders. And I put myself, and I said the same thing today on a different program I was on, I put myself in the shoes of an American that was around during the Reconstruction period, when in the South, they were literally divided into military districts, and they were literally put under a kind of martial law. And I asked myself, if I was an American during the Reconstruction period, would I believe that America is doomed for and that we don't have a country left? Of course I would have. I was literally under martial law in a country that professes freedom. Of course I would have. If I was a black person in the 1880s, post-Reconstruction era, dealing with the Jim Crow laws and the black codes, getting lynched and harassed by random people, would I think that America is done with? Of course I would have. Of course I would have. If I was an American farmer out on the prairie during the 1930s, 1920s, during the Great Depression, would I have believed America was done for? Of course I would have. Of course I would have. Why wouldn't I? Because hindsight is 2020. Surveying everything that's happened in our history, or most of the things that happened in our history, where we've gone to a point where the presidents used to go out in the street and shoot each other in gunfights, to now the presidency is considered to be sacred. I think America is actually one of the best times that it has been in a very long while. Do we have problems? Yes. A runaway administrative state? Yes. Do we have an increasingly dumbed down younger generation? Yes. Do we have a surveillance state? Yes. We have problems that our new era has produced that the old eras didn't have. But relative to American history, those problems are relatively minuscule. I'll take dealing with a surveillance state and an administrative state over dealing with a lower life expectancy, famine, and economic downturn in the late 1920s. I'll take dealing with the surveillance state and the administrative state over having to go and fight a war against my own countrymen to maintain the Union in the 1860s. I'll take an administrative state and a surveillance state, and I'll take the transgender nonsense and all the other kind of chaos over having to have my food rationed to support a war that, in all honesty, in the real truth, I'm not even sure was totally in America's interest to support World War II and be propagandized by the government. I'll take every issue we have right now that certain podcasters, I won't name names, will sit and take those issues and say civil war all the time.
Right.
When considered in the light of American history. So 2024, is it important? Yeah, I guess it is. But it's not ride or die. It's not make or break. No. In a nation like us that has survived so many growing pains that could have easily broken us into pieces, no, it's not make or break. I think there will be in America way after 2024. I think that America will continue to be a beacon of light. I think that beacon will dim if we are complacent and we don't fight. I'm not saying don't fight. I'm saying no, we have to push. We have to fight. We have to have a revolution of the mind. We have to read history. We have to study philosophy. We have to push back. We have to have that same grit that the people who resisted the whiskey tax in the early founding generation had. and where they were unwilling to bow down to tyranny, even if it was a petty tyranny. They were unwilling to bow down to tyranny. We have to have that same grit. Which is why I urge people, please stay away from people who try to blackpill you. I think that's what they call it these days, blackpill or whatever. Stay away from that, please. It's not worth it. People may think that online politics is a game and it's just an arena. No, this is how people in the modern era get their politics. Online politics today is what blogging was to the 2005 Political Observer. Blogs were big back then. That's where you get your Michelle Malkins, your Ann Coulters, all those people. That's where you get them. And then cable came in and took that away. So online politics is actually pretty important because, as we've seen, online politics has a massive impact on the real world. It won't have as much. It doesn't have much of an impact now as it will in 10 years. It'll have even more of an impact as we get more digitally interconnected. But it has an impact. So I take this seriously when I'm on here. I know you guys do too. When I'm on here, I try to be very careful with what I say. If I'm going to say to someone, civil war is imminent, what if that person has anxiety? What if that person is going through a depressive state in life? That's going to fuck up their mind. So why would I play with someone's mental health just to get clicks? But creators online do it all the time because catastrophe sells. That's going to be our real challenge in America, actually trying to find our way out of Plato's cave towards a sensible kind of political commentary. We can absolutely begin with watching Front Porch Conservatives. You are absolutely sensible and balanced and everything. But unfortunately, there's a lot of trash. There's a lot of noise and no signal today. And we're going to have to figure out how we can navigate all of that if we're going to ever have a healthy country. That's my opinion.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree. And I want to try and give an update, and where they're getting these numbers from, I don't know, but I'll throw this up on the screen before I take it over to Brent to answer the latest question. What does 2024 mean? This is from CNN. And like I say, where they're getting their numbers, I think, off of the Associated Press, but where the AP is getting their numbers, I don't know, because the Iowa GOP and the Decision Desk are not nearly as reporting these kind of numbers as is CNN and the AP. So just to let you guys know. Yeah, sus is right. But just to give everybody an update, the commentary tonight is fantastic. We're watching results. And the reason that up to this point I hadn't put anything up on the screen, I kept looking at the Iowa GOP's website and Decision Desk. They're all running relatively mild reported numbers. Again, this is from CNN. Where they're getting it off the AP. But where the AP is getting their numbers, I do not know yet, because the way that this is supposed to be going is that the votes are tallied, they're called into the GOP's headquarters, and the GOP posts the numbers. So I'm not sure where AP is getting this from, just to let you guys know. But Brent, I'll throw it over to you.
Way,
do what?
Can I tell a story from the 2020 Iowa Caucus?
Go ahead.
So you have to remember, Trump was unopposed in the primary. So I almost didn't go to the caucus, and I guess I technically didn't. I decided to go like later, kind of late in the evening, and so by the time I actually got to the caucus location, because I was confused on where I was supposed to go, the caucus had already ended. But apparently Donald Trump Jr. was there, and so I listened to him speak a little bit. But anyways, I got back home and I was checking out Google to see what the results of the Democratic caucus were, because I was just curious what was going to happen there. And I went to bed and I saw that they were still reporting 0%. And I was like, that's weird. Well, I'm sure it'll get updated overnight. I wake up the next morning and I check the results and it still says 0% reporting. And I'm like, what? This is like, does anybody remember this? It was a complete fiasco. It was the next morning. They still had no idea what had happened. The votes and the tallies were just not like coming in. But Pete Buttigieg just like jumped on a stage and was like, I won. Thank you so much, Iowa. And then it turns out like he did win, but like also he didn't know that when he made that announcement.
Yeah.
So
Sketchy.
So just like for reference, that was the last Iowa caucus where we didn't have anything at the end of the night, and the next morning it was still a disaster. So be grateful that you're getting anything tonight. Even the 2020 election was like, why? It's been 3 days. Why don't we know yet?
Oh, there gets into a subject that can be. We could run all night with that one. Brent, I'll throw it over to you to finish out the answers on the question. 2024. I mean, you and Daniel as partners for the Dangerous Rhetoric podcast, individually and as a partnership, you guys have gone through a lot of stuff over the past 4 years, and you know, you guys are, and everybody here in one form or another is at the vanguard of talking about things that matter to everybody, regardless of whether it's in the social cultural realm, which is a lot of what Brentley and Daniel do, or whether it's in the political realm, which is a lot of what Christian and Chad and Reuben do, or, you know, which is kind of a mixed bag of my channel. But everybody here is talking about stuff that matters to people. When Brent, when you're having these discussions, or even in your own mind when you're sitting around thinking about it, you know, when you go to vote this November, what's on your mind when you go into the ballot box?
Well, the question is, will my vote actually be counted, or will there be floods of phantom votes, you know, coming from who knows where, dropped at all hours of the night, you know, that won't be scrutinized for signature checks, that'll have, you know, come in from questionable sources. These are all the shenanigans that we saw, you know, in past cycles. So I'm going to be real curious to see what kind of shenanigans are ongoing this time around, especially as we lead up to the election, because this election, much like the 2020 election, what happens around the election, in my opinion, matters just as much as the result. So we're already seeing around the 2024 election, Democrat lawfare. You know, they're trying to remove Trump from the ballot. They've successfully got him off so far in 2 states. SCOTUS is probably going to weigh in and tell them no, they can't do that. Curious to see that come out. But this is what the Democrats are essentially trying to change the way our elections run. You know, now it's, we can take you off the ballot if we don't like the things that you say, you know, because that's one of the big things they're going after Trump is because he challenged the electoral result, which is, you know, very clearly a 1A sort of protected activity. You're criticizing like an election outcome. That's very clearly his First Amendment right. So will they be able to go after Trump and his supporters legally for challenging the result in any number of ways? What happens is the outcome of the January 6th defendants. You know, we still have, I think it's like a couple of like 300 people that are in jail or awaiting trial or serving time. Most of them on that 1512C2, which the Supreme Court's going to be hearing, and we'll probably have a result by June. So that's going to be a huge impact to the ongoing, you know, whatever's happening in the election. When that result comes out, and it's very likely that it's going to be positive for Trump, that's going to be, you know, benefit to him, even if he has had a conviction, you know, in one of the other 4 cases that are against him. So will the lawfare be successful or will it backfire? Also, I feel like 2024 is sort of this, we're really like all the veils are coming down and the truth is being laid to bear in front of us, and we are being offered a choice. You can pay attention, get involved, speak your mind, and try to have some positive outcome on the situation, or roll over, ignore it, pretend not to care, or just go along with whatever is trendy or popular. And, you know, FAFO, as far as I'm concerned, you know, we'll mess around and see what happens. Like, so I think it's really important election. You know, all elections are theoretically important, but this election, we've got so much going on, so many constitutional questions about the future of our republic. and precedents to be set if Trump is successfully removed from the ballot. Because if theoretically, if they can do this to Trump, they can do it to anybody. So
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
if the Democrats do have, I don't expect them to have any success. I think it's going to backfire gloriously. And the deep state is going to be kicking and screaming and gnashing their teeth all year long and having their assets, that they've smuggled in through the southern border and what have you, going off and causing chaos in the country. It's going to be a wild ride. So I'm fully here for it. I think it's going to be entertaining as long as you can stay safe and stay sane while it's all going. That's like one of my little favorite messages to communicate to people out there. Like, make sure you're like physically secure, but also like, how's your sanity doing? Because there's a lot happening. It's very challenging and it's very stressful, and self-care. It's all I can encourage for people out there in viewer land.
Well, I'm not necessarily worried about staying safe, although I'll always try to do that. The sanity part, I went round the bend a long time ago. Who are we all kidding? If you happen to be joining us right now, it's about 9:45 p.m. Eastern, 8:45 out in Iowa. My name is Brian Trippett. I'm the Front Porch Conservative. I am joined tonight as we're watching the results of the Iowa Caucus come in by an absolutely fantastic panel of content creators and commentators. My good buddy Reuben Christopher Haynes is here. The Professor Christian Watson is here. We have Brentley who is one half of the Dangerous Rhetoric podcast, and from social media we have Mr. Chad Manley. And I'm going to put this up on screen. This is from one of our viewers tonight on YouTube, John McGarvey. 37% reporting, 52% to Trump, 20% to DeSantis. 19% to Nikki, and 7% to Vivek. I've got some updated numbers from Decision Desk, and I'll go ahead and put these up on screen real fast. And they come close to matching what John was just reporting to us. And it's got Trump above 50%, DeSantis with, a second place, but right on his heels is Nikki, and Vivek is coming in. I'll call it 8% if you round it up. So yeah, it's still going to be. I think the second and third place are going to be really fascinating, and you never know. I mean, Vivek might have votes coming in from places, and he might be getting into a three-way for the finish line between DeSantis and Nikki. So we'll see how that all shakes out. I would like to touch on something that Brent brought up, and I'd like to think that at the age I am in life, I've seen just about everything there is to see in American politics, or have read about everything there is to hear about in American politics. But I have never, until now, heard of a political party, and let's just be honest about it. This is the effort of the Democrats. I mean, individuals can file these lawsuits all they want to, but this is at the behest of the Democrat Party in one form or another. Maybe not by directly, but it's to their benefit. I've never heard of one political party suing to take somebody off the ballot under the circumstances in which they're trying to do it. Now, I need to back this up a second because I'm about to misspeak myself here. I've heard of occasions where someone's candidacy has been challenged. Either they don't reside in the district, or they don't meet the minimum qualifications, etc. Constitutionally speaking, Donald Trump meets every qualification to run for president. Okay? He's of sufficient age. He's a citizen of the United States. He's lived in the United States a requisite number of years. But I have never heard of using the 14th Amendment's insurrection clause as the means to try and take somebody off the ballot. And, I mean, I'd like all of your takes on and beyond that, there's another case that Brent brought up, which is the J6ers, which is being argued before the Supreme Court this term, that has to do with the question of, disrupting of an official proceeding. Well, that's half of the 4-count indictment that Jack Smith, has brought against Trump. So what do you guys think about all this, and where does it go from here? And Reuben, I'm going to start it with you. I'm going to step away for just 1 second. And then, I'll come back, but if you guys get done answering before I get back, bounce it around. So take it, my friend.
So basically, again, I'm one of the people who knows the process. When the election in 2020 happened, I knew the outcome. I know that Trump did win. I know that. And then I saw that January 6th, they're going to do the proper thing. The electors that the state will go for will do the proper thing. And then the congressmen like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, and others were doing the proper process to get there, to get the electors slate removed because those things weren't certified. But you have to remember something: the Democrats play a long game, and if you go back to the election of 2000, when Bush won, they vowed back then, they purposely made a mockery, and you've seen it in movies and in TV shows, of Katherine Harris, the Florida Secretary of State, because they say that she was coerced to put Bush over the top, which is not true because they've done a count after count and he won. But then they knew that that's why that all of the secretaries of state of these states were Democratic, and they were able to manipulate because that was their long game. They've been doing the long game ever since Woodrow Wilson for over 100 years now. That was the whole aspect of the Fabian socialists getting to control. And that's why the House under Reagan was controlled by the Democratic Party for a very, very long time. So anything he could do to cut taxes, they would still raise spending, and they were happy to do it along because of the uniparties was being brewed back there to get it up. So the issue here is it's insane what they're doing. It just boggles the mind, in my opinion, what they're going to do. So when it comes to what Trump did, so Trump went out there and basically said he said it, and then this is where it gets very nefarious, where you had a concerted effort to get rid of Parler. Trump Twitter was being controlled. It's now X. So I can say Twitter is the old guard, and we know that Twitter files did. So it was a concerted effort and Pelosi was responsible for the Capitol Police to get them. And you have the chief of Capitol Police, Tucker Carlson, has been reporting on it. They purposely opened up the gates. Those doors at the Capitol are magnetically locked. Someone unlocked them. The videos came out, and they said, "No, you can't see the videos. No, release the videos. See what actually happened." Riots, all these different things that were going on. The bricks that show up on different locations. Nobody died that day except for Ashley Babbitt. And they say that that the police officer was died. No, it was totally unrelated. And you have innocent people who were let in to the Capitol building who are now in jail, solitary confinement. Last Friday, we were one of the Jay Sixter's family members. He's locked up, solitary confinement. They are treating these patriots as insurrectionists and evil people, and it's insane what we're doing to normal people who went there because they knew the process, like myself, who would go there, and I would have gone if I was able to, but not into the Capitol. I would just gone there to support the whole process, and I wouldn't have gone in. Just that's not my thing. Because again, it's like because again, I saw what they were doing, and I said, okay, we have to do this legally. We have to take this to the Supreme Court. And they knew that they could lose in that realm. So they basically said, okay, let them go. We have CNN. We have all the news behind our backs. We have the media behind our back. So, and we have the Capitol Police behind our back. We have the Democrats behind our back. We have the establishment Republicans on our back. So they created this illusion, psyop. And they actually, it's been proven, and Tucker's been talking about it. And as you see now that's popping up, they shot rubber bullets into the crowd to force them in there and to create this chaos. And then you have AOC and the other ilk go in there, and now you have it on MSNBC every day. Insurrection. It's going all the time. And you see it when anybody on YouTube talks about January 6th, even Wikipedia and Google are collusioning. That you say at the bottom, it says the January 6th was what Trump told people to go and storm the Capitol. They say it on there, and it didn't happen. It's a false narrative, and it's insane that what they have done. And my heart goes out to these people because, again, the patriots, those that read the Constitution, that know what's in the law, know what the process is, that you're president-elect until January 6th when it's certified. And then they turn the certification into a chaotic moment. And the news will come out. And that is what they fear the most. They truly fear that when Trump is installed back in office legally, and they say he's going to kill the gays, he's going to kill reporters. No, that's happening now. It's happening now. They are doing this. We had one gentleman who was trying to report what's going on in Ukraine, and they murdered him. They're doing this to report. They're doxing people now. They say it's going to happen. It's already happening. And lo and behold, and Trump brought this up in his last town hall, that he doesn't want to be Herbert Hoover. Because, again, if he's installed, they will purposely. The stock market is not up because it's a higher, because they're just propping it up. They're buying their own stock, what they shouldn't do. But no reporter has the balls to say it. You have James O'Keefe now because Veritas got corrupted, and he's he's doing his own thing. And you have other podcasters that are doing these things and other independents doing these things. And we have X, thank God, as a platform that was still open to do this. But again, things can change in a blink of an eye. So we have to be very, very careful on what we move forward. But I think that, once he gets installed back and wins the vote legitimately, again, that things will change. And then I wholeheartedly believe that all these people should be released, that they are being subjected to torture. And I'm very ashamed of what the justice system is doing, and how it's been corrupted by the Democrats and the establishment.
Yeah, you could call it cruel and unusual punishment, because historically, anybody that ever got in trouble at the Capitol for protesting, before January 6th. It was a desk appearance, a slap on the wrist, a small fine, disorderly conduct,
Yes.
Reasonable response, proportionate.
Yeah. First time offenses and all that stuff. Yeah.
For the first time ever, they pull out this 1512C2 obstruction of official proceeding, which was meant to be applied to executives that destroy evidence of wrongdoing, like, what was happening at Enron, which is where the law came from. So this is the first time that this rule has ever been applied to protesters, and it's very questionable for several reasons, that being one of them. The other one being whether or not this qualified as an official proceeding. Now, it sounds kind of ridiculous. Of course, there was an interruption of an ongoing, but the terminology there is very particular, and there's like a legal term for what an official proceeding was. And a legal proceeding or an official proceeding has to be like somebody's being sworn in, there's being evidence given.
Right.
This was more of a ceremonial gathering, as what the legal term. So even though it was interrupted, it was not an official, it wasn't an official proceeding. Sure. So there's a lot of reasons that this whole thing could get thrown out. And then on top of it, January 6th was totally a Fedsurrection. The evidence is clear across the board, 100%. If there's any doubt in your mind, you haven't simply done the homework, because I've been in numerous spaces where, from a clear analysis, expert analysis of the pipe bomb material. So these are the not one, but two pipe bombs that were found, bear striking resemblance to materials used by the FBI to train their own personnel. And, notice how that whole story just vanished in the media. Mm-hmm. There was no follow-up, no scrutiny, no investigation there. And that's just one data point. That's I was on the grounds. I went down, I watched Trump speak, and then we walked over to the Capitol. And by the time we got there, the Capitol was, seemingly under siege. There was people all over. There was, smoke in the air. There was generalized chaos. There were no police to be found, no barricades, no nothing. So people were sort of just meandering everywhere. And I saw people going around being like, come with us. We're storming the Capitol. We're going inside. And I'm just like, that's a bad idea. And I didn't think Fed at the time. I should have. But that's what was happening. And that's what we saw. And then, as you said, those electronic doors were unlocked. They let people in. There's, one of the guys, one of the famous acquittals, there wasn't many acquittals, but there was a couple acquittals. And one of them got acquitted because he was able to convince the judge that he was waived in, that he was invited, because he presented video evidence of a cop sort of flagging them in and waving them in. So there's questions left to be, who ordered these doors to be opened? Who ordered the police to wave people in? And was this organized by Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats and Christopher Wray? Because, so far their testimony under oath has been paltry. Their investigation, the January 6th, investigation that Nancy Pelosi did, was an obvious political kangaroo hit job, totally just designed to blame everything on Donald Trump, which is, the narrative that we saw from the beginning. They kicked him off Twitter 2 days later. It made it very hard for him to communicate with people, to present his side of the story. And they've just been generating this entire BS narrative of an insurrection when it wasn't an insurrection. At the most, it was a handful of rowdy protesters. And the bigger story was that there was probably close to 1 million people in the Capitol that day who didn't think that the outcome of the 2020 election was legitimate, and they wanted to have their voices heard. And if of those 1 million people, a couple hundred at most were violent, and half of those were federal agents or their, confidential human sources, then, what's going on here for real? And why aren't we having the conversation about the real story here, that the feds, psyoped, booby-trapped people and wanted the entire American public to believe that Joe Biden was legitimately elected when there was probably legitimate questions that were interrupted. That's the other thing, the January 6th committees, the things that were going to be ongoing, just as they were about to present evidence of shenanigans in Arizona, was when the call came to evacuate the senators and the congressmen. So they weren't able to actually present their evidence that Trump's, election was foul played.
Yep. And before I throw it over to Chad and Christian, I want to put this is for the benefit of the panelists, and I also want, to, as always, share interaction from our audience. Gentlemen, your efforts tonight do not go unappreciated. I just thought you might want to see this. We're now, aside from being commentators and content creators and everything else, we're studs. So, well, I don't know about y'all, but I'll definitely take some of that. Anyway, my name's Brian Trippett. I'm the Front Porch Conservative. I'm joined tonight by Reuben Christopher Haynes, Christian Watson, Chad Manley, and Brent from the Dangerous Rate podcast. And we've got some updated numbers, and I'll put these up on screen real fast. With about 40% of the vote in, and this is from the decision desk. Again, Trump's already been declared winner. DeSantis is, I won't say taken off from Nikki, but he's got a little bit more of a cushion than he's had before. And again, this is still early. It's almost half the vote in, but we'll see how it all goes throughout the night. So I want to throw it over to Chad, and then I'll finish it out with Christian. The lawfare against Donald Trump and what it means to we the people. I mean, Trump's made this comment on more than one occasion. Hey, if they can do it to me, they'll do it to you. I mean, what does it say about the state of our politics and the almost what's the word I want to use to describe the effect? The almost shriekingly maniacal reaction that the establishment has to the idea of Donald Trump coming back to the presidency, that they're willing to go to these lengths to try to keep him out, to do something that up to now, and again, as I said, there have been lawsuits brought over the years, on the basis of qualification to run for office, but what is it about Trump? I mean, I know it's derangement syndrome, but what does it say about the establishment? They're willing to go quite this far to keep him out.
I think what it says is that they know that they're losing their stranglehold on power, and so they're willing to do anything to to keep it. Regarding the lawfare and what it means for we the people, what's really scary about it is that in these states they're removing Trump from the ballot based on crimes that he was never found guilty of. There was never a trial. It was nothing like that, because it was Colorado and Maine, correct? And in Colorado, they said, the insurrection thing, and I forget what the reason was in Maine, but in Colorado, it's like, well, he wasn't tried for insurrection. Like that, of the 4 lawsuits that were brought against him, none of them were for insurrection. So you're saying that because of a crime that he hasn't even been tried for, he can't run for office. And that gets into...
And just one point about Maine, if I may inject, at least in Colorado, there was a court case. There were judges involved. Now, I could sit and argue all day long about, discovery, introduction of evidence, etc. In Maine, the Secretary of State just unilaterally took it upon herself. Oh no, he committed insurrection. We're going to take him off the ballot. Not even, before the state legislature, not even before a judge. She just like, nope, he's gone. So
she cited Colorado.
Yeah, she cited Colorado. But go ahead,
and
Chad.
So,
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. And it reminds me of one of Trump's really famous lines from when he was president. He said, they're not coming after me, they're coming after you. I'm just in the way. And this is the perfect example of that. Because if they can remove Trump from the ballot because of a crime he hasn't even been tried for, then they can do that to lower level Republicans as well in states, especially people who do not have the resources to fight back against it. Trump is very wealthy. He has a lot of donor money, so he can fight these lawsuits, and he can bring a lawsuit against the Colorado Supreme Court. Joe Schmo running for mayor, who is told that some rando judge kicked him off the ballot because the judge didn't like one of his tweets or something. That guy's not going to have the ability to fight back. So this is, like I said, or I guess as Trump said, they're not after him, they're after us, and he's just in their way. Yeah. So that's what all this lawfare is about. It seems like a giant step because they're doing it against like the leading candidate in the opposing party, but they are testing the waters. They are testing the waters to see if they can do this against anybody. Because if they can do it against Trump, they can do it against you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Christian, what do you think?
Yeah, well, a few things on this one. So first, to Trump's point that if they can do this to me, they can do this to you. I'm happy that a lot of people on the right are waking up to the abuses of the law enforcement system. I'm very happy because these have been well storied and well known for decades. It didn't just happen a few years ago. It didn't just happen 2 years ago or 3 years ago. This has been happening. This has been a story for so many Americans for a very, very long time, partially due to the policies that the institutional right, the Republican Party, have advocated for as it relates to policing. I mean, even Vivek Ramaswamy, who, again, is my preferred choice, but even he has said that I want to maintain and strengthen qualified immunity for police officers. Well, for the people who don't know what qualified immunity is, very simply, it simply says if there's no precedent to sue a law enforcement officer in this jurisdiction, you can't do it. So if no one's brought a case against a law enforcement officer in the way you want to do it in a particular jurisdiction, you can't do it. And if you can't bring a case in the first place, you can't do it. So it basically shields officers or makes it really hard, very difficult to actually effectively and successfully sue an officer or sue a police department in court. It makes it incredibly difficult. And of course, judges and prosecutors are protected by sovereign immunity, which makes it also more difficult. And the argument is that if you open up the gateways to sue prosecutors and judges and officers, you'll have these public officials afraid to do their jobs. And I don't advocate opening up the gateways. What I do advocate for, a system of accountability that allows those who do their job wrong and abuse power and act with malfeasance to be held accountable, and not on the taxpayer's dime, because these days departments just pay off the tax, just pay off settlements from the taxpayer. No, I wanted to come directly from the officers that are accused of wrongdoing. So that there's one thing about that, but this has been happening for years. Look at the voluminous amount of eminent domain cases that have been happening for years. You know, the Keto case versus City of London, Little Pink House. That lady's land was literally seized by the law enforcement, or they tried to at least, in the name of public use. Well, the Constitution says there must be just compensation, and beyond the Constitution, I'm a constitutionalist. Beyond the Constitution, eminent domain is just, in my opinion, ethically illegal. The government does not have a right to take your property by force in the name of anything. So, in my opinion, the Constitution should be amended in that respect. But that's a different story, a different day. Let's look at the cases that a lot of people in prison right now are in prison for nonviolent offenses due to the Nixon drug panels that were encouraged by a lot of African-American legislators to deal with the problem in their communities. Didn't actually fix anything. What it did was made a problem worse, breaking up families, playing the grounds for welfarism to be emboldened by divorcing the father from the home. So no, they had been coming after people for a very, very, very long time. Look at the Patriot Act. Look at the FISA courts. The fact that there is a secret court that can just rubber stamp stuff. They have been coming after people. They do. Look at all these people that have been arrested. Simply for speaking their own minds or for being a threat to the government. Look at people like MLK. Look at the people like the Vietnam anti-war protesters. Look at the folks targeted by COINTELPRO. Look at everything. They have been coming after you for a very, very long time. And so it would do the MAGA world very good to realize that and to, instead of embracing incremental reformism, they embrace a mentality of abolitionism where they want to get rid of these agencies entirely. You can't reform the FBI, you can't reform the NSA, you can't reform the DHS, you can't reform these institutions. They are evil to the core. They are based on an idea that is fundamentally anti-American, and therefore they must be destroyed. Now, on the issue of what they're doing to Trump and the ballot strikings. So there's this perverse idea within law that made its way into American civilization in the early 1900s called sociological jurisprudence. And its first extoller was a guy called Roscoe Pound. And this idea is that judicial decisions should be made on the basis, not on principle, not on philosophy, not even on the Constitution, but they should be made on the basis of their social mindedness. They should be considered in terms of their social impact. This was the credo of the progressive era movement in the 1900s. It was that you have to move beyond this rigid system of principles that don't reflect, in their opinion, facts of society. You have to take those facts of society and make them the dominant ethos. Well, we saw this kind of happen before this idea came along with John Dewey's progressive education. Progressive education being that they should emphasize the social mindedness of a child over a child's ability to understand the subject at hand. They wanted to make sure a child was socially attuned and they were paying attention to certain issues in society as opposed to paying attention to general issues. And that's what eventually came into our education system. That's why it's so centralized. That's why it's so broken, because we moved away from teaching subjects to teaching social issues, which we now see the spoils of that in our modern era. But anyway, so sociological jurisprudence says that law can be viewed solely through the social lens. Okay, well, if you don't have any principles that restrain your use of law, then your use of law will change as society changes because it's based on social consciousness. That therefore gives the panel of judges in Colorado the ability to say that we understand how grave this is, but we believe, according to our particular reading of the Constitution, that this is important, and also due to the social impact of what he did, we have to get rid of him. Well, they did. That's the basis they used. Then you go over to Maine, where it's literally this bureaucrat. And if you look at the justification put out on Maine.gov, this bureaucrat who says, yeah, I got about 3 or 4 complaints from Maine citizens that were concerned about Donald Trump. And so I'm going to take these concerns and investigate them. Well, I'm sorry, but that's not how you run a republic. You don't get to unilaterally decide things on the basis of what a small minority, or especially not a majority of people want. You have to decide things on the basis of principles. But if you embrace sociological jurisprudence as a valid idea, which is what has been embraced by American courts for 100 years, and is more colloquially called judicial activism, then most certainly you could easily say that she had a valid case to make. So what we're seeing here is a consequence of first principles in philosophy being discarded for political self-interestedness and social agendas. That's what we're seeing here. That's why I try to end every video I make with 3 exclamations. study history, study philosophy, and stay morally convicted. It's not just something to make yourself feel smart. Trust me, philosophy makes me feel dumb because you're reading literally some of the greatest minds out there, right? Try reading Hegel, try reading Nietzsche and keeping your sanity. Try reading Kant and thinking you're the smartest man ever. No, they will make you feel like you are absolutely stupid. They will floor you because of how galaxy brain these people were. Even Aristotle, try reading him. He will floor you as well. So I think that when I say these things, I don't say them because they're comfortable or they're nice. I say them because they're necessary. Because you can't understand what's happening to Donald Trump. You can't understand COINTELPRO. You can't understand McCarthy. You can't understand any of this stuff without first understanding the basis upon which this castle was built. And that basis is the social progressivism of the 1900s that redefined certain functions of American republicanism and then twisted them into the vision of the utopians, the egalitarians that wanted to ram down social change and progress by coercion, by force, by introducing European-style, Prussian-style ideas influenced by Wilhelm von Humboldt and his ilk into our system. That's what it's about. And so we have to get that. We have to level with that. And we have to see, yeah, President Trump is getting part of it. Sure, he's getting part of it. But he's not even getting the worst of it. I feel bad for all those people targeted during the 70s under COINTELPRO, who didn't have representation, who were disappeared, who were charged just for having a political view. The establishment viewed dangerous. I feel bad for those people. I feel bad for those people sincerely. And so we have to really evaluate our legal system in America. The solution would be for us to get back to a system where not precedent, not common law, but natural law, particularly 18th century style natural law, even more particularly 18th century style John Locke natural law, is the basis for our legal system. Go back and read Marbury versus Madison, and then go ahead and read the Dobbs case, right? You will see how different they are. Or even better, go back and read Marbury versus Madison, go back and go over and read Obergefell, and see the basis that both of those cases had, see the kind of arguments. You will see more principle and philosophical and more novel legal theory arguments in Marbury versus Madison than you will see in Obergefell, where they literally read or write the Constitution that doesn't exist. Yep. So, and that's not just because Madison was like one of the first main instances of this judicial review. Sure. It's because of the culture of legal thinking that has been greatly deviated from since our American founding. So that's my view. We have to go back to the root of this to understand where this comes from and how to diagnose it and effectively how to fix it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, for those who may be just stopping by or dropping in, I'm always glad to have you. My name is Brian Trippett. I'm the Front Porch Conservative, joined tonight by Reuben Christopher Haynes, Christian Watson, Chad Manley, and Brent from the Dangerous Rhetoric podcast. We're watching the results of the Iowa Caucus come in. We're still waiting for some updated numbers. The last thing that I had given, and still running about the same. Again, Donald Trump was declared the winner very early on, which was no surprise to anybody. The $1 million question now is who finishes second and third, and the results are coming in haltingly. So we're kind of, hanging out as we need to, updating as quickly as we possibly can. And you, our audience tonight, both on YouTube, on Rumble, on Twitter, you guys have been fantastic. I've seen all the tweets, the Gettrs, the Truth Socials, everything you guys have been sending out, spreading the word around. We genuinely thank you very, very much. And thank you very much. We do our best here. We do our best. Let me find. She put up one other comment. Yeah, I must have missed it. Here it is. Yes, sorry. Yes, thank you very much. We genuinely appreciate that. Genuinely appreciate that.
Hi is a good woman.
Yes, she is. Yes, she is. Daggone it. And yeah, and this is an interesting comment. The adherence to natural law requires a certain level of morality. On that point, I can't disagree with him. I really can't.
Yeah, I have a few thoughts about that. If you want,
yeah.
If you want. So,
what? Go ahead.
So we have a crisis of moral education in the West. That's not a secret. That's something that I talk about all the time. It's painfully obvious. Yeah. And when you consider the kind of age we live right now, virtually the younger generations, both Gen Z and then also Gen Alpha, which is the up-and-coming generation, have been or are being raised under the auspices of a digital tyranny of the mind, where their attention spans are deliberately whittled down by algorithms that seek to activate their sort of hedonistic and internal hedonistic desires, then this becomes even more unfortunate, because we understand that moral thinking is not the easiest thing. It's very messy sometimes. Even if you're like me or you're a deontologist, you believe there's objective truth, and there are objective rules that explain morality. Even then, you will be required in some situations to think through things that require a keen mind, and not a mind that is reduced by mediocre habits like we have today. I think the embodiment of mediocre habits that we have today is probably TikTok. It's one of the biggest embodiments of that. So mediocre, it's so terrible. I refuse to get on it. And really, I also refuse to kind of acknowledge these TikTok stars or influencers, because I'm thinking to myself, well, if your main thing is appealing to people who can't really think beyond 60-second sound bites, I'm not entirely sure how much value you have to offer me. Maybe you have value to offer other people. That's great. Not knocking that. But someone like me who's hungry for fruit, who's trying to learn more, I don't think you have much value to offer. And most importantly, I'm not entirely sure they have much value to offer to the nation. Because we have a nation right now that needs fruit, that needs intellectual fruit, but all they're getting are clouds that have no rain, wells that have run dry a long time ago. There's nothing for them to take from. So how do we fix this is the question. Well, we fix this, I think, a few ways. We have to. How do norms come into place in the first place? Norms come into place by the culture setting expectations. Well, if the culture overran with a vice, the expectation will be vice. If culture is addicted to algorithms and technology, the expectation will be algorithms technology. But if we can kind of use those tools that the culture is overcome with for a positive purpose, we can perhaps inspire new norms in the souls and hearts of man. So I advocate using the technological medium like YouTube or whatever, or Twitter, to reach people on a deeper level than they have been expecting for the past few years that they've been on this. We look at this statistically, we see a very big upturn in around 2016 in the amount of use of social media and its impact on the presidential elections. Well, there's been a standard set since 2016 about how we communicate over these mediums. People have heard all the time, Twitter is not real life. Well, unfortunately, Twitter has real life consequences, and Twitter can have a lot of real world impact. So maybe we should start treating Twitter as real life. Maybe that's the first start. And then working off from that, we then begin to inspire a sense of how we should treat people in our political discourse with respect and reciprocity, which doesn't happen on social media. It's a big screaming cage match. And then beyond that, we can begin setting a new standard. If we set standards, I believe our culture can be saved. And I believe that we can get to a point where natural law type thinking is more amendable to the population. But it's not going to happen if we remain stuck in our mediocre ways and we continue to allow the algorithms and the digital age to rule us like we are slaves, like we are serfs, to its inevitable ascent. So that's my thoughts on that. I believe that we can have a natural law society, a natural law-based society. Maybe it's just youthful optimism. Maybe my head is in the clouds, but I 100% believe, and this is what I'm going to try to do through my channel and my commentary, that we can have a natural law society once again. Because if we don't have a natural law society, America will never truly be the nation it was meant to be.
Agreed. I remember an old quote from John Adams. He was talking about the Constitution that had just been drafted in 1787, and he made the comment, and I think it was around the time or shortly thereafter, he said, the Constitution is made for a moral people. It does not function well for anyone else. And most people who would have read that statement at the time Adams wrote it would have understood perfectly what it means. Now, I say it in 21st century America, oh, that bigot, oh, that racist, oh, that whatever. Well, he was not wrong. A lot of the problems, and this is just me, waxing philosophic, a lot of the problems that America has today aren't necessarily, in my book, the problems. They're the symptoms thereof. In that, okay, we have one side using lawfare against another side to try to put them in jail or stop them from participating in the process. Well, what is that born out of? It's born out of envy. It's born out of hate. It's born out of lack of love for your fellow man. I mean, go down the list of issues that we're dealing with in the country right now, and it inevitably winds its way back to the question of, what kind of immoral people are we? It always cracks me up, or you're used to anyway, but the argument's not so much made anymore. Oh, you cannot legislate morality. Well, that's absurd. And I'll tell you why, because laws, by their very enactment, are statements of morality. The issue isn't can you legislate morality or not. The issue is whose morality are you legislating, and what exactly does it do? I mean, so
Right.
I always find that to be fairly interesting and somewhat quizzical for me. It's like, huh? Of course we're legislating morality. It's just whose are we doing it to? But
Right.
we're waiting for some results to come in. It's about 40% of the vote still in. I want to put one thing up there just to give you an idea of the level of dominance that former President Trump enjoys in his victory tonight. Guys, take a look at this. This is from the Iowa GOP's website, and that almost what I call blood red is representative for the tallies for Donald Trump, with the exception of 4 counties in Iowa that have not reported in yet. And again, some of these counties, they're done. Their results are in. I mean, just to give you some example, this is over on the eastern side of the state. This is Jackson County. 100% of their precincts are in. You go up here to Howard County. 100% of it is in. 83% of it over here in Winneshiek. And for all you Iowans out there watching this, just look over me. Remember, I'm from West Virginia. I cannot necessarily pronounce your county correctly, so just understand I'm a hillbilly. Look over me. Anyway, Kossuth, 100% is in. That, I mean, just from a horse race standpoint, I don't know what y'all call it, but I look at that map, and that is a good old-fashioned butt kicking. Now, like I said, everybody figured this was going to happen. Now, the question is, what do the numbers finally, round out to? Again, this is from Decision Desk, and we're waiting for some of this to update. But, and again, Trump's final number may drop below 50. It may be above 50. But remember what I said very early on, the historic markers for what this race is. The highest percentage of the GOP vote ever attained was 41%. The largest margin of victory was 12%. If these numbers hold up right now, you're looking at least anywhere between 25 to 30% margin of victory. And you're also looking at he'll crack above 41. So just to give some ideas. Again, we're still waiting for some numbers to come in. And, I want to thank everybody on the panel tonight because you guys are just on fire. I mean, there's not to a man in this group, I've never hosted one of these before, and social media is a number of different things. And again, as I'm kind of navigating my way through doing this stuff for the first time, there'll be stuff that we change and stuff that that we do to improve it and make it better. But I got to tell you what, as far as the quality of the group that's here tonight, folks, if you're looking for something different on social media, these individuals, if you're not subscribed to their channels, give them a sub. I mean, every last person here, follow them on Twitter, follow them on YouTube, follow them on Rumble, follow them wherever they may be. This is it's an amazing group of people. They're point to your names. Remember, sub to your stuff. There you go. I mean, hey, I'm all for commercials. Y'all want to plug something? Go right ahead. I got no problem with it. I'm equal opportunity here. But yeah, it's an absolute pleasure to be here with you fellas tonight. And like I said, everything you've dropped is just truth bombing, and it's on fire. So yeah, you guys are absolutely fantastic. And for everybody out there on YouTube, on Rumble, on Twitter that's watching us tonight, gosh, we're glad to have you here. I mean, there's 1,000,001 places on social media you could go to watch these results or watch these numbers come in. The fact that you're here with us is just a very high honor, and we get it. You guys have got lives. You can't necessarily stay for the whole thing. We respect that totally. But yeah, we're glad to have you here. So, I mean, we're still going to go for a while, gentlemen, and you know, as I've told everyone, if you got to pop out of here and bounce out, I get it. But I mean, as we're watching it come in, and as everything you're hearing, let's just call this the tossed salad version of the show. Random thoughts, Chad. I'll throw it to you first.
I will be interested to see what the turnout for Biden is in Iowa. Because, you know, I was looking at, I did some digging, and I wanted to see how many votes incumbent presidents got in their respective primaries for re-election.
Okay.
In 2020, Trump got 31,421 votes.
Okay.
In
What
2012,
what year was that?
that was 2020.
Okay.
When he was the incumbent. In 2012, when Obama was the incumbent, he got 8,064 votes in Iowa. So, like, not that many people showed up for Obama. Tons of people showed up for Trump. And again, when they were the incumbents running for re-election and unopposed. So the Democrat primary caucus schedule is kind of shifted around. So Iowa won't be for the Democrats until March. I believe it's on Super Tuesday, actually. But I am curious to see how many people show up and for the Democratic caucus in Iowa for Biden. Because I'm sure that a ton of people who plan on voting for Biden in 2020 don't actually care about supporting him in the primary because they're not enthusiastic Biden voters. I don't know if I've ever met or even heard of an enthusiastic Biden voter. And Brent, I actually wanted to touch on something that you said earlier today. You know, you said that only like 50% of Americans vote or something like that. And wouldn't it be great if more people did vote? You know, I'm not so sure about that, actually, because, you know, you have to think of how I think about this as an economist. I'm always thinking at the margin. I'm always thinking about the marginal person. What happened in 2020 with a ton of mail-in voting is we got a lot of marginal voters. And these are people, like, the reason they don't vote is because they don't think enough about it to vote. So when you lower the cost for them, that goes along with voting. You don't have to wait in line. You don't have to look up where your precinct is. You don't have to make plans and move things around and any of that. You can just do it at home and put it in the mailbox. We see how they vote. And considering the outcome of that election, I would say that they chose pretty poorly.
Those aren't real votes, though.
Yeah. But that doesn't change the fact that Biden is the president and that we have to deal with. But you understand what I'm saying. I am not convinced. Like, I know there's a lot of like get out the vote efforts. I fucking hate. Oh, excuse me. I don't know if I can curse on here. I don't
give a damn what you say.
All right. I fucking hate get out the vote efforts because they're about like, oh, it's your civic duty. And it's like, how about you do some research? Like, that'd be great. Like, just, I don't know, figure out like what each candidate, what their policy positions are, what their track records are. A lot of those marginal voters go in with just vibes and what they've seen on social media and in the mainstream media, and that information tends to swing in one particular direction. So I'm not a fan of get out the vote efforts. I'm not on board with the idea of more people need to vote. I think more people need to do their research, and if they decide to vote after that, okay, cool. But just getting to the end of go vote, not a fan of that.
Very
Well,
true.
I think the reason
Not to throw you under the bus or anything.
No, but the reason I was suggesting that is because so many people would be pissed off about the state of things that they would have a protest vote in favor of Donald Trump. So I don't think mail-in balloting is good. I think it's one of the ways that they rigged the last election, and that they will continue to rig elections, and that we've already seen evidence. If you've done any scrutiny of I think it was Arizona or Nevada, I can't remember which one has Maricopa in it. Which state? Is that Arizona?
Arizona, I believe.
Arizona had a lot of evidence of shenanigans in 2020 and 2022. There's a really good documentary on Rumble. Shoot, now I can't remember the name. That goes over all the evidence from the 2022 election. And they showed quite clearly, like, the signatures on the ballots did not match, and yet they were still counted. And they said it's very similar problems in 2020. So there's plenty of evidence of shenanigans across the board. And I don't think they've been fully explored or scrutinized. When Democrats or, corporatists dismiss that, judges saw the challenges and, there was no evidence there. Like, this is the same thing that they say about Joe Biden. This is the same thing, there's no evidence. There's plenty of evidence to be scrutinized. They just don't want to hear it. They don't want to acknowledge that it exists. They don't want to take a look at it. They don't want to have an honest conversation about it. So they lie. They lie all the time about everything. This is one of my favorite things to say about leftists and the corporate establishment. They lie all the time about everything, and they often lie in the exact opposite direction of the truth. So I don't think the mail-in ballots are legitimate. And I think if more people do end up voting, it'll be like that protest vote, because people have seen what's gone on. They'll be so upset with the way Donald Trump has been treated, and how these Democrats are the very thing that they claim that MAGA Republicans are. They're calling MAGA Republicans extremists. They are the extremists. They're trying to use the, questionable legal shenanigans in order to exclude a man from the ballot after he was already cleared of the crime of insurrection by the Senate in, one sort of legal proceeding. So you want to, he's never been convicted of the crime, number one. Number two, they're arguing he doesn't even need to be convicted of a crime, because you don't actually have to be convicted to have participated in insurrection. This is the argument that they're making. So now they're basically just saying, should we declare it to be so, you can be removed from the ballot and excluded from the contest. And that's what we've seen, par for the course from the Democrats. It's like how they got rid of Bernie Sanders. They basically sort of nudged him to the side and put Hillary right in his place, and kind of forced him to bend the knee and just, stronger together, whatever. And, we all saw how that worked out. So,
Hey, Chad, can I ask you a question? Go back to the number you had on Trump in 2020. You said he got 31,000 votes in Iowa?
I believe that's right. Yeah, that's what I saw earlier today. I was just the Wikipedia page. So
No, that's cool. Is that the highest number on the Republican side ever, or is that relative to other elections? And there's a reason why I'm asking. I'm setting something up.
I don't know, because I was only interested in years where an incumbent was unopposed in a primary, and apparently in 2004 there wasn't an Iowa Republican caucus for the Republicans.
No, there would have been. It would have been George W. Bush, but he would have been unopposed.
Now, so I couldn't find numbers on that, but yeah. So as far as the most votes for an incumbent or something like that, I don't know, because the data, I just couldn't find data that went back very far, and there are only a few data points. So,
well, there's a reason why I'm asking that question, and I bring this up to demonstrate the dominance of Trump's victory tonight. Take a look at this. The numbers are starting to really come in on the decision desk, and Trump is above his 2020 total.
Yeah.
Look, say what you want to about Trump, and Lord knows people will. They're free to have their opinion about him, as they want. There's 65% of the vote in, and he is just absolutely, if you doubled what Ron DeSantis has got right now in second place, he wouldn't even touch him. He wouldn't even get near him. That's how bad the butt kicking is.
And think of when you think about it this way, think about the weather situation right now, and you still have the turnout at this level.
Yeah.
So this says something.
Yeah, that's a real good point.
What I tell you, people wanted to get out after this weekend.
Well, I will say this, and I love everybody out in Iowa that's watching us tonight, and doggone, and I know you are. You're just being real shy and not telling us. Bless your hearts. If getting out of the house, if your idea of excitement of getting out of the house is to go to a political event, God love you. Bless your heart.
I love it.
I say it with love.
Because I was living
in Western Iowa, then because we were snowed in from Thursday until today, and I was checking my local church, and our priest canceled all the weekend masses, and he gave us all a dispensation because the roads were so bad, the weather was so bad. So if you're in Western Iowa, how bad it was.
Oh yeah,
this weekend.
Yeah. There is one other thing about this that I want to point out, and the vote dump is coming in faster and faster. They're now up to 84%. There is one thing about this, and I want your gentleman's opinion. DeSantis is holding a steady lead on Nikki Haley. It runs about 2 points. Here's the question that I've got for you guys. If Nikki Haley does come in third coming out of Iowa, because right now there is a narrative, and I hate that word, by the way. There's a narrative being crafted that Nikki, she's the contender to Trump. She's who you got to worry about. That's who the horse race is. Well, if she comes out third in Iowa, what does that really do to the whole horse race idea in New Hampshire going forward? Because, let's just even get beyond the question of New Hampshire for a second, okay? I don't know if you guys have looked ahead to the Nevada Caucus and the South Carolina primary, both of which will take place in the month of February. Right now, Donald Trump's got, if you think what he's doing in Iowa tonight is something, he's got a 50-point lead in the polls out in Nevada. Let me say that again. He's holding a 50-point lead in Nevada, and then you go down to South Carolina, which is Nikki Haley's home state. She's got 30%. Here's the question that I've got. Is it conceivable that, everybody's going to go up to New Hampshire in 8 days. We're going to have a primary up there. But is it conceivable that if she comes in third place tonight in Iowa, realistically speaking, she's done? Forget New Hampshire 8 days from now. Reuben, I'll start with you.
I believe so. I believe that the what's been coming out the last few days, being Hillary 2.0, has really damaged her. And to throw it off, who's it, Haley and I think that Haley, Vivek, and DeSantis have spent $250 million to come in a distant second, third, and fourth. It's insane.
Yeah. Christian, what about you? Is Haley done after tonight?
Is she done? I think that she's going to wait till New Hampshire. She made that horrific remark that New Hampshire will correct what Iowa did. That woman, there's not a single thing likable about her. One of my biggest kryptonite, I can handle a lot. Stupidity, I can't handle. I literally will just keel over and throw up and go into a seizure if I'm around stupidity for too much. That woman is one of the most unintelligent people to run for politics in the modern era. At least Hillary Clinton had some political savvy to her, and she had some Machiavellian instinct. She's not a dumb lady. In fact, Hillary is actually incredibly smart, because even though her husband had an affair on her, from her, at least she was able to use that as a tool to get into the Senate seat in New York, to try to build herself up as the potential first female president. So no, she's actually very, very smart and very deep, which makes her dangerous. Haley is only dangerous because she's just so unintelligent. I don't even know how she has a political career. I really don't. But I think she's going to stay in the fight until New Hampshire. Whatever happens in New Hampshire will probably dictate the direction of her career. As for DeSantis, though, I'm surprised he's getting second, because I thought his career, and by the way, his race may still be dead, depending on how bad he loses to Trump. Because Trump can say, I curb stomped you, I just blew you out of the water. That makes the case for DeSantis much, much harder. So, but coming in second, maybe his justification to stay in, I don't know. But I was expecting like a third or fourth place finish for him. So I'm actually decently surprised about this. And Ramaswamy, there's not going to be a shock. No. The only shock is that his expectations failed despite all of his hard work. That's the shock. That's the shock. I am astonished. This guy, I watched almost every single event that he did in Iowa live on his YouTube channel when he was doing them. This guy did 2 double Grasslys, worked harder than most people.
Yeah,
brought
absolutely.
influencers, people with millions of followers, had them campaign with him. Can barely crack 8%.
Yeah.
It just goes to show you, social media doesn't always translate into what people in the grassroots think.
That's
it just
absolutely
goes to show
true.
you. People think that if you got 1 million followers on social media, you're like this big honcho. I can go to my local Republican club right now and ask the gray hairs there, do you know who Tim Pool is? They'll be like, who? They know who Hannity is, though. They know who Hannity is. They know who Bill O'Reilly is.
Yeah.
They're still the older generation directing things. So it's one of the reasons why I don't get why people obsess over influencers and like that. Okay, they have numbers. So the hell what? Most people don't even know who they are. When I think of a country of 330 million people, you have 1 million followers. That's a drop in the bucket. So I think this kind of just informs us that influencers and algorithms and social media followings aren't a guaranteed political win for you.
I'm surprised how poorly Vivek's doing, frankly, because he basically did a town hall every day. Like you said, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. He was out doing everything. Again, I commend him for his ground game. In his perceived ground game, because the ground game is now showing what actually happened. 8% is not good. I thought Christie, if he didn't really get 8% or less, if he was really the only one there, he did nothing. That's a dismal record. And then again, I think maybe what he said yesterday with the photo op really affected. I don't know what's going on there. It's just interesting.
It's a shame.
Brent.
Sorry.
Well, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'll be quick. At this point, I don't see justification for Vivek remaining in the race. I don't see any justification. It's a waste of his own money. He just sold a $32 million stock that he had in Reuben, his company, to continue funding his campaign. Waste of money. Sell your apartment in Iowa. Shut down headquarters, go back to Ohio, start a podcast, start a media company. I'll happily join you. Something like that. Like just go and affect the conversation. And then later, there's a future for him, though. There's absolutely a future.
No, I agree. I agree with that completely.
It's not now. It's not now.
And Vivek, if you're watching this, and we know you are, we'll give references to this man. You want references on this guy? You got it. Absolutely. You need to do it. Brent, Chad, what do you think? I mean, are we headed for a situation up in New Hampshire where Haley and DeSantis are going to fight for this non-Trump vote, and they're going to wind up splitting each other, and Trump again, I mean, not to the level, obviously, that, a 30-point victory in Iowa, but are we headed for a situation where he's set to cruise because DeSantis's campaign has a pulse? I'm not going to say it's back off the mattress bed, but it's got a pulse. I mean, are they headed for a situation up there where they're going to split this vote? I mean, which you two wants to start it, go ahead.
Well, I'm curious to see, what the numbers end up being at the end. You said how many percentages are in now? Like 80-ish?
Yeah, we're talking 92% of the vote out in Iowa, according to the Decision Desk, is in.
Yeah, so I'm actually a little bummed that the Trump number isn't higher. Like, I wanted to see Trump north of like 55%. So I'm a little bummed that it's not there. This is kind of like sort of what I did not want to happen. I'm also a little surprised that Nikki Haley's number is as high as it was, like almost 20%. Like, wow, like really? Like bird brain Nikki Haley, who spent like $50,000 on curtains in her Manhattan apartment during her ambassadorship. Like,
oh Lord,
these people just like not know these things. Like, I guess these are just the random facts that jump out of my brain. But like, I was a little bummed by her showing there. I'm glad to see her in third place at least. Like, she's not, beating DeSantis. But I'm just not surprised. I'm just a little surprised those numbers are as high as they are. Trump, the clear winner. And as you said earlier, the historical comparison is worthy of note. And, I think we see another 3-4 of these primaries, and hopefully these candidates, get what out of the experience they need to get out of it, and basically, gracefully bow out. I could see Nikki Haley just sort of like hanging around because, she thinks she's going to have somebody whispering in her ear to hang around. Same with DeSantis. But I think, with Vivek going around, less than 10%, I agree. It's time for him probably to bow out and better spend the money elsewhere. Like you said, do a media thing, podcasting, get involved in the conversation, because he's obviously a really good orator and he enjoys jousting with media. I would love to see him joust with more members of the corporate press. I feel like that's really good content. And that's what I've seen most of Vivek going viral is clips when he's jousting with media personalities. Mm-hmm. So I hope to see more of that in the future.
Okay. Chad, what about you? What do you think happened? I mean, let me back up before I throw it to you. There's one point about DeSantis. It looks like he may hold on to a second place finish. And a lot of people have talked about, DeSantis's people had really worked hard on trying to put together a ground game where they could get their vote out, even though they were probably going to lose to Trump. So I'm not necessarily surprised in one sense that he's coming in second if he holds on to it. Let's put it that way. But, I mean, Chad, what do you think? Going to New Hampshire with Haley coming in third, does this undercut her argument that she's the alternative to Trump? And are we setting up a situation where Haley and DeSantis are going to try and they're going to wind up splitting the Never Trumper vote, and then Trump goes on to cruise to a easier than expected victory? And whereas before, if it would have been him and Haley, it would have been probably harder.
Yeah. Well, I think this third place finish for Haley definitely undermines the narrative that she's the real threat to Trump that he needs to worry about. Then do better. Now I don't think she's going to drop out after New Hampshire. I think she's hoping, like Joe Biden did, that she's going to have a firewall in South Carolina because that's her state. Right. I think she stays until South Carolina. I think she does really well in South Carolina. And I think that I don't think it's a firewall for her, but I think it breathes a little bit of a new life into her campaign that then peters out slowly as the primaries go on. For DeSantis, I always think that the idea of having like political momentum is really dumb because, like, when I vote in a primary, I'm not like, well, this guy did really well in, the other state 300 miles away. I'm just like, that's not how I make my decision in the voting booth, but whatever. But every time I think that, I am proven wrong by the American people. Oh, my battery's running low, so I'm going to have to log off when I'm done with this comment. But
understood.
I could see, even just like having a couple points on Nikki Haley, I can see this really playing to DeSantis's benefit in New Hampshire. Not sure how that pans out in South Carolina, considering that it is Nikki Haley's home turf.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think this shows that the Haley campaign is in trouble, and it's kind of funny because it's Haley who stole a lot of those votes away from DeSantis. Like, if Haley jumps out of the race, those votes go over to DeSantis. They don't go to Trump.
Agreed.
So your idea of DeSantis and Haley staying in together and basically just providing Trump a very clear path to victory, I think that's pretty likely. I think Haley's going to stay in longer than she should. And it's not, instead of, it being Trump versus DeSantis, it's going to be Trump, DeSantis, Haley, and probably Vivek as well for probably until April. I think we're into April before somebody actually drops out.
Okay. I will disagree with you ever so slightly, and here's why I say that. I could see Nikki staying into South Carolina. Okay. On the other hand, I could also see her dropping out before South Carolina on the grounds, okay, it may be her home state, but she is not. I mean, much like DeSantis, he's not going to be embarrassed in Florida where he's still a sitting governor. And even though she's not a sitting governor in South Carolina anymore, she is not going to want to be embarrassed.
Like how Kamala Harris dropped out before California.
She dropped out before California back in 2020.
I could see that.
Now, it is theoretically possible. And again, we just had the first voting event of 2024. But, if you followed me any amount of time, you know that I'm a big fan of Rich Barris, the pollster, the people's pundit on social media. He has put forth the idea it's theoretically possible, given the rules on proportionality of delegate allocation, which in the end, this is what this is all about, that Trump could have this thing wrapped up by Super Tuesday, which is March the 5th, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it's theoretically possible. So this could get real interesting real quick. And at that point, if Trump has the requisite number of delegates, there's only two things standing in his way. The convention in the convention in July, and court cases potentially used against him to try to give somebody the idea inside the Republican nomination, hey, we got to get this. He's been convicted. He's on trial. We can't have him be our nominee. We got to go to the convention and get the delegates released and get a revote done or something. An open convention, basically. So we'll see what happens with that. Just one quick update.
I'm gonna have to go because my computer.
Chad, where can people find you on social media real quick before you get out of here?
That's my handle right there at Chad Manley 007. So go follow me on Twitter. I post physique, and you can find the link to my book in my Twitter bio. So,
all right. Well, sir,
thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure, and we will do this again. So have a good night, sir. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Nice to meet you guys. Good seeing you two again. Peace out.
Take care.
Arrivederci. All right. Okay. Christian had informed me that Vivek Ramaswamy is going to have a press conference at 11:15 Eastern. It's just about 11 o'clock now. Now, this is up to you guys. I know you guys have got schedules and lives. If you want to hang around for this, that's cool. If I can find a link to it, I will definitely put it up
X somewhere.
Probably on X.
Okay. Yeah, if somebody can find me a link to it, I mean, I'll start looking for it while we're all talking. But if somebody happens to find it, shoot it to me in the private chat. Yeah, I mean, we'll definitely jip in to listen to that by all means. So, yeah, if you're here with us still, and the folks out there on YouTube, Twitter, and Rumble, thank you so much for being here tonight. My name is Brian Tripp, and I'm the Front Porch Conservative. This is Reuben Christopher Haynes, Christian Watson, Brent from the Dangerous Rhetoric podcast. We're watching the results of the Iowa Caucus come in. And just to give everybody a quick update, this is from Decision Desk. 98% of it's in. Trump was declared the winner very early on. The only question was, how many votes would he get? What's the margin of victory? As it stands right now, and there's still some vote out there, although not very much. He's clipped 50+%.
Yeah.
DeSantis is holding second at 21.3. Haley's coming in at a 19 even. Vivek Ramaswamy is coming in like 7.7. And that powerhouse of a political candidate, Ryan Binkley, is garnering a solid 0.7%. I see him doing big things going forward. Woo!
Who is that?
I don't know. I have no idea. Just saying.
Wow.
I don't know. No idea.
1.0%. Wow.
It says here Vivek's going to do it live on X too. It's on his Twitter page.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
We'll absolutely when 11:15 rolls around, and like I say, for those out in the audience, I know you've got lives, I know you've got jobs, and stay as long as you can. We'd love to have you be here. If you have to drop out, we understand completely. If my co-hosts bless your hearts, have to drop out. I get it. So, and so we'll definitely go, as long as, mind and body and, vocal cords will allow for. I mean, the result is more or less in. So we'll definitely stick around for Vivek's press conference. I'm very curious to hear what he's got to say. And I guess here's my question for the panel: if, as Christian has suggested, Vivek drops out after tonight, if not during this announcement or somewhere in the next couple of days, where does his vote go, in your guys' opinion? Anybody want to jump in? Feel free.
It has to go to Trump. It has to go to Trump. He has to correct what he did yesterday.
Yeah.
And Nikki Haley has just shot herself in the foot if she said that, Vivek, that she's basically telling Iowans that they don't count. It's insane.
Oh, yeah. When I heard that comment about, New Hampshire will correct what Iowans do, I went, oh, woman, you did not just say that. You did not just drop that comment.
That's the whole idea of the flyover states. They basically they just don't care about the middle America. That's insane.
Yeah. I was like, I mean, Christian, your point about, the comparison between her and Hillary Clinton is most certainly valid. I mean, I cannot stand a thing Hillary Clinton believes in politically, but I'll give her this. She is a Machiavellian genius when it comes to politics.
She is, which is what makes her dangerous.
Oh, I agree. I mean, she has a sense of entitlement that's as big as the Grand Canyon, but she's downright Machiavellian when it comes to the execution of political strategy. She's brilliant at it. You may hate everything it is.
Both literally and metaphorically. Literally and metaphorically execution. Yeah. And both
senses. Things have been said. I just,
The evidentiary record seems to point that direction.
Not saying she kills people, but she kills people.
It seems to point to that direction. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist or anything like that, but the evidence is overwhelming that a lot of people who are associated with her seem to turn up dead. I wonder why that is.
I can remember. If you really want to go back, Reuben, I'm going to drop a name here.
I know Neil. Vince Foster, Fort Marcy Park.
That's exactly where I was going. You read my mind.
No. Here's the thing. I went there. I actually went to DC and went there, and I actually back in the day wrote a piece, music, for Fort Marcy Park, because again I knew how dangerous it was back in '92. So I was just I was composing stuff and trying to get the word on. Then that's what we have to do. We have to call out this stuff. It's how can you hang yourself and shoot yourself with a shotgun?
Well, now we do have one of our listeners that's like, okay, yeah, point taken. We agree. Now, Brentley, to answer your question about who is this Ryan Binkley, according to Google, Ryan Binkley is a pastor, businessman, and politician, co-founded a church in Texas with his wife. So he's coming to this thing with a big-time religious stance. Well, okay, there you go. So there's your answer. I've always said I've got the smartest audience on social media, and daggone it, it's moments like that just prove why. So there you go. It's about 11 p.m. Eastern and 10 p.m. out in Iowa. The results of the caucus are more or less done, and it's just a matter of, tallying everything up. So we're just waiting around for a press statement by Vivek Ramaswamy. And we're on YouTube, we're on Rumble, we're on Twitter. My name is Brian Trippin on the Front Porch Conservative, which, by the way, just to let everybody know, a little sneak peek ahead, we're going to be doing the same similar thing next Tuesday night, covering the New Hampshire primary. Gentlemen, I hadn't talked to you yet, but of course the chairs are always open to you should you wish to participate. I'd love to have you guys come back, but I'm not gonna I'm not going to put you on the spot and make you answer for that because I know you've got lives and schedules and.
Oh no, I'll come back. I can come
All
back.
right, cool.
I'll come back.
I mean, yeah, we'd love to have you, and you never know with us who else might show up for this intellectual soiree. There'll be all kinds of analysis to this thing. So, but yeah, this has been for me a load of fun, and we're not quite done yet. We're going to hang around for a little bit. In about 10 minutes, Vivek Ramaswamy is going to give a statement to the press post the vote in Iowa, and we'll hear what he has to say. But yeah, this has been a load of fun tonight. And, to my co-host, to everybody out there on social media who's watching this, as I say, we're not as slick as the cable news networks and maybe not have all the best graphics or whatever, but we will give you our honest opinion and we will always tell you what we think. Lord help you if you're not ready to hear it, but we'll tell you what we think. So, and that's part of the joy of what we're doing here. So, yeah, I'm going to be very fascinated to see what happens between now and next Tuesday night because, I think everybody here kind of agrees it's setting up a situation where because of Ron DeSantis' second place finish tonight, he's going into New Hampshire with the potential to split Nikki Haley's vote and come back at Trump. Because I mean, the interesting thing about DeSantis, he started out, the thought was that he was going to really eat into Donald Trump's base. And, it would, as time would go by, Trump would be weakened because of the various problems that he had legally. And, that vote would, come off of Trump and slide over to DeSantis. Well, the problem with that is, the legal issues had the opposite effect. They bolstered Trump in the eyes of the GOP base, and the more Ron DeSantis started to talk, people were like, I can't agree with you on the issues. And then there's some things you say, I'm like, dude, really? Or I should say governor dude. Sorry, I should be more respectful of the law. Governor dude, really? So yeah, this is setting up a fascinating thing come now. And the other thing is there's going to be a lot of campaigning between tomorrow morning and next Tuesday night. So this is going to be fascinating to watch. It really is. And, we're going to be back doing more of this. And we've also got I'm trying to work it out, or I'm trying to make an arrangement, just kind of a long-term thing that, Trump's case before the Supreme Court on the appeal of the Colorado decision is coming up, I believe, February 4th or 5th. If I can do it, I'm going to try and live stream that. The Supreme Court doesn't allow cameras into the chamber, which is perfectly fine by me, but they do allow audio. So if I can, work it out to do a live stream that day, just to listen in on the questions that are asked, I think that's going to be fascinating as well. But yeah, we're going to be doing events like this all throughout the primary season and all the way into the election. While we're waiting on Vivek Ramaswamy's statement to the press, there is one question that I want to ask you guys about. And it's something that Chad brought up before he left. And that's this. There is switching gears and talking about the Democrat side of this equation. There has been a consistent undertow to Joe Biden's political base, and maybe undertow is not the right word, but there's been a consistent problem that he's had. And this goes back all the way to February of last year. And that is, there's about 35 to 40% of Democrats that don't want Biden to run. I mean, and you could say that for whatever reason. They just don't want him, which I've always said is universally true of Biden over his political life. He is not loved inside his own party. He's looked upon, at least this is my take, he's looked upon as a good political soldier. He carries the water. He'll try and do the right thing by the party. But as far as like a universal engendering love, it's not there. So here's my question, and I guess this is more for the general election, at least what your guys' thoughts on the matter are. You got a significant portion of his base that doesn't want him to run. He knows this, and the reason that he knows it, he changed the order of Democrat voting this year where South Carolina goes first. And just absolutely honked off Democrats up in New Hampshire and most certainly made Democrats in Iowa mad. Is this something that's going to get worse for him the closer he gets to the election? Or is that 25 or 30% just going to stay right at that level? Your thoughts?
Well, I'll start off. The most important thing here is that Biden is not going to run on what he did. He's going to run on what Trump, in his mind, and the base fears that Trump will do. He started off with his Valley Forge speech. It was all about Trump and the tyranny that they say Trump's going to bring. It's the same playbook that Obama did in 2012 against Romney. It's basically saying, he's going to do this. They're going after the big corporations, big business, all that stuff. Now it's just about MAGA this, MAGA this, MAGA this. That's the new Yahtzee term, and they're going to push it there. So the people who are basically saying in the background, again, it's the same people that were whispering in Haley's ear and DeSantis' ear, trying to get them to run. And to try and just ruin their own political careers, political suicide against Trump. That same group is courting, or they try to court this Newsom, and they're hear rumblings they're going to try and get Michelle Obama to do something. Who knows? They just trying to figure out something, and they are going to do again. 2024 will just like 1968. And they're trying to silence Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and it's just insane what they're trying to do. So will he still be on the ballot? I don't know. Things could go really awry. Some people that I've spoken to in different streams have said that they think there will be no election in 2024, and I cannot see that happening. But who knows? They're trying to railroad Trump on this whole trumped up charges that mean nothing. So their focus, and I mean the uniparty, I mean the Hollywood, the big pharma, big tech, everything is going to basically try their damnedest to just prop up this puppet Biden up, and then force everything there. But it's going to be this is it. This is really it. And again, Haley, when she said that Iowa doesn't matter, that New Hampshire will correct Iowa. That's the mainstream media talking point. People tomorrow are going to dismiss Iowa. They're going to say they're corn huskers or nothing. They're going to put down Iowans. And it's, again, the big cities are going to do this, and it's going to be very, very detrimental. And people need to wake up because, again, everybody's vote matters. They were all about the one man, one vote. Don't suppress the vote. Don't stop what's going on here. And back in 2016 and 2020, the whole idea, they say Trump was trying to stop people from voting and trying to do this stuff. And now they're just going to say that it doesn't matter. They can't have it both ways. It's disingenuous.
Yeah, absolutely. Christian?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that, so I don't really see, Biden is a phenomenon. Just going back to that question, Biden is a phenomenon of the DNC. He is just a puppet phenomenon of the DNC. I don't really think they are pushing him because he's the best guy for the job. They're pushing him because he's the incumbent, and the incumbent has a hallowed status in American politics. The incumbent is just like this bulletproof figure. And that's very interesting. But again, there's been a lot of theories floating around. I don't know as to their accuracy, but I wouldn't be surprised if someone decides to, let's say, if midway through the process, Biden has some kind of medical emergency or he is deemed unfit to run, and the DNC, through some kind of contrived donor process, decides to fit someone else in to take his place, I wouldn't be surprised. It would be in line with what they're doing right now. I mean, there are several Democratic candidates running right now, including Marianne Williamson, and the DNC has completely ignored them. They've railroaded them. They have basically denied their ability to partake in the elections, like they did to Bernie Sanders back in 2016, because they already decided that Hillary Clinton was going to be the one who was going to win. So they could easily, this wouldn't be unprecedented. I just think the people that are voting on the left right now are not looking for a visionary, looking for someone who can vanquish Trump. That's the main thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. Brent?
Well, I was thinking like the alternative to Biden would be really like RFK. Like he's the sort of liberal, alternative that's out there. Gavin Newsom doesn't want the job. Michelle Obama doesn't want the job. There's very few people that seemingly want the job. And, Hillary Clinton, they even floated, like, I saw something in the press about her, like, even like thinking about, coming back. And it was so like roundly mocked online that like the whole thing disappeared within like 48 hours. So it's really funny how desperate the entity behind the Democrats is for a vessel, for an archon, an avatar that it can inhabit and push forward, because the best they have right now is Joe Biden, and he's basically, weakened to Bernie's animated corpse, and everybody sees it, which is why, the Houthis are going off, in the Red Sea.
Yeah.
And China is going off in the South China Sea, and everything's just like going cuckoo bananas town, is because there's nobody with any principles, any willingness to stand up for what's right here at home. There's just this ailing Joe Biden who's like as corrupt as they come. Everybody knows he's corrupt as they come. He's taking $5 million bribes and who knows what else. Like, it's just so obscene. And the fact that they, the establishment in the media and big tech all collaborated to keep the story about his son's laptop, which had all this evidence of drug use and prostitution, kept that all suppressed as Russian disinformation until a year and a half after the election. Like, wow, talk about election interference,
Yeah.
Like, it's just ridiculous to me that this is where we're at. And this man, somehow Joe Biden is still, like, I'm surprised Joe Biden's even still, like, functioning. Like, he just looks like he's falling apart, unless a good bit of his senility is a put on, is an affectation, is an act.
There is some thought that that's the case. Miranda Devine of the New York Post has posited on more than one occasion that a lot of his issues that a lot of us have commented on are really for effect, and he's not nearly as bad off as people seem to believe. So we'll see. I'm monitoring Vivek's Twitter page right now to see, and if somebody finds this before I do, let me know, to see when the press conference starts. But yeah, it's we're just basically waiting for that. Yeah, we're just waiting on that at this point. I'm gonna be fascinated to see how this goes down. This is gonna be really interesting. Really
I
interesting.
want to know how he justifies his continuance in the race if he does try to do that. That's my question. There's just, from a business perspective, because he's a businessman, from a business perspective, there's not a single pitch you can give me other than the idea that, okay, I'm insurance in case they take Trump off the ballot. And if he goes with that, then I think that his standing becomes even more tenuous, because just him saying, vote for me, vote save Trump, got him into trouble. If he basically makes the insurance case, Trump will just go lay into him. It won't even be funny.
Yeah,
So,
he'll go nuclear. I agree.
So I have no clue what his case is to stay. I said this is someone who supported him, and I think that it's time for reflection, because I have to ask myself, why did I support him? For many reasons. I thought he was smart, articulated, he's very philosophically consistent, very morally consistent, but a lot of it was as well had to do with his presence confronting the media and his presence on
Agreed.
social media as well.
Agreed.
He was the social media candidate. If social media like the president, he'd be president 10 times over. But social media is not like the president. Just because you have a good social media strategy does not mean that you're going to be president. So maybe there was something missing. I don't know. I think that maybe the presence of Trump in the race might have done something. But Ron DeSantis, he got a decent portion with Trump in the race, but DeSantis offers a very different view than both Trump and Ramaswamy. So they're going to have to reflect on this and see what's going on, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, and the other part of it is, I mean, for all the criticisms that we have of the other candidates, DeSantis, Trump, Haley, let's be honest, they're known quantities.
Yes.
I will say this. I think Vivek gives a look into the future of how social media is going to be utilized in campaigning. I mean, I will say this. If Vivek Ramaswamy would have had better name recognition, because he had the money, he had the charisma, he had the message, he had the looks, he had everything else. The only thing he didn't have, or two things. One is experience in a campaign at this level. And let's be honest, it pays off. There's that. But then also just out and out name recognition. I mean, like it or not, it's almost one of the coins of gold a candidate has to have in their pouch in order to be successful. And, he had everything else except those two things. And I think in the end, great social media strategies aside, it's just not enough, especially when you're going up against, I mean, lay aside.
Vivek is live.
He is live. Okay, hang on. Let me see if I can get this pulled up. Oh, come on. Where is it? Here we go. Hang on. Let me see what I can do here. Work some magic. And hang on, fellas.
But to our own side, and not just to other campaigns and candidacies, but to ours. And so I will stick to the truth tonight. The first hard truth, and this one's hard for me, I gotta admit this, but we've looked at it every which way, and I think it is true that we did not achieve the surprise that we wanted to deliver tonight. And I think that that's just a hard fact that we're going to have to accept as a campaign. And the question then is, what do we do that is right for our country? And so Porv and I, we actually didn't make this contingency plan before everybody told us to. We said, no, we're not doing that. But we talked about it tonight. We took a little bit of time in our apartment in Des Moines before coming here to make some hard choices. And I wanted to make a couple of announcements tonight to get the business out of the way. And then I want to tell you where we're going. As of this moment, we are going to suspend this presidential campaign. And this is going to have to be, there's no path for me to be the next president absent things that we don't want to see happen in this country. And I think that I am very worried for our country. I think we are skating on thin ice as a nation. We have done everything in our part to make, and done, every one of us in this room has done our part to save this country. And I am so proud of every one of you who have lifted us up, but we're a campaign founded on the truth. And so that's why we've made that decision today. And I'm also making the decision that this has to be an America First candidate in that White House. As I've said since the beginning, there are two America First candidates in this race. And earlier tonight, I called Donald Trump to tell him that I congratulate him on his victory. And now going forward, he will have my full endorsement for the presidency. And I think we're going to do the right thing for this country. And so I'm going to ask you to follow me in taking our America First movement to the next level. It did not begin in 2016. It began in 1776. And for the next journey of this race, we are going to make sure that our movement is actually the one that actually leads and saves this country in the next step. And as for this movement, founded on truth, America First 2.0, we're just getting started. That doesn't end today. That begins today, actually. So we're just getting warmed up. Apoorva and I, we're not going anywhere. We are in this for the future of our country. We've lived the phase of our life. This country has allowed us to live an American dream that my parents, who were here with us earlier, helping take care of our little boys, they never imagined when they came to this country 40 years ago. Yet now we have lived an American dream that we want to pass on to these kids and their generation. And so the phase of our life where we were getting ahead for ourselves, making a good life for our family, this country's already given us that. This next chapter of our life and the next chapter of our journey and the next few years, and even the rest of this year, is about giving back to this country to create a country that I am worried for. But if we all do our part, and I've been asking that of you at every step of the way, asking patriots across this state, across this country to do their part, I promise you, if you did your part, you have that we will do ours. And we're going to do our part now going forward to make sure that America First lives on, to make sure that Donald Trump is successful as the next president of the United States, to make sure that it isn't some other puppet they trot out to make sure that they steal this country out from underneath us. We're not going to let that happen. We're going to take this movement to the next level. And I think after that, it's another 250 years and then some still left ahead of us. And if you all continue to join us in this journey, I'm going to ask you to do that. We're just getting warmed up. If you all do your part, and we're going to do ours, our best days as a nation still will as yet be ahead of us. So thank you guys for coming today. God bless you and your families, and may God bless our United States of America. Appreciate that, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
All right. So there you have it, folks. Vivek Ramaswamy has dropped out of the presidential race. So, and let's just take it around the board. I mean, what are you guys' thoughts on this? I mean, I think Christian was right. There's no path forward. And what becomes the justification for why he stays in the race? So, your thoughts.
Well, very briefly, I'll just say that, yeah, it's the right thing to do. If he came in for, like, it surprised me he did. But if he did, then he had to clear signal that it's on his time. And of course, yesterday hurt him. It hurt that didn't come up right. And then the whole Obama 2.0 didn't help at all. But I think that was more on the Haley DeSantis side, because again, they played dirty politics. And he did the honorable thing. He bowed out, and he's supporting Trump because it is American first. That's the whole idea. Because again, I support Trump because he is the proxy for me. He's a proxy for you. He's a proxy for everybody. He's a proxy for Muslims, Jews, Christians, liberals, LGBTQ. He is the proxy for the regular person, the individual. And don't be afraid, because again, it's not about anything, any personality. It's about the individual and the freedom that the individual should have. And again, a self-made man like Vivek, I respect him. And I'm very happy that he said the words he said. I'm very happy that he said that he called President Trump to congratulate him, and that's an important thing. All the other ones are out there saying, well, Haley said what she said, and again, not to be dismissive of the individual, but then to praise the individual and have that America first thing, because that's what I believe in. And this type of response makes me feel glad to be American again. Somebody who has immigrant parents, who comes here and has a vision for the future and has done very well for himself. And that's what we have to do. We have to continue to believe in that aspect of being rugged individualism that Rick talked about. Yeah. And to go forward, and I'm very happy that he did this.
Yeah. Christian?
Well, I'm actually a little bit emotional, and I have a bunch of different emotions. I'm happy, I'm disappointed, but it's realistic. So, I'll say this, I'll level. As someone who's met Vivek, who I met him back in March of last year, met his wife, met his kids before he was even a big name, before all the viral moments, spent the whole day, 7-8 hours of them talking to him, going on his podcast, talking to him personally. He never was, in my opinion, just trying to be a VP pick. This is a guy who had innovative ideas, who was new to the political scene, who, really didn't know how bad things were, really didn't know how to lay of the land work. He came in with a very idealistic mentality. And he sold a lot of people on the idealistic mentality. And the level of good that this man has done to our political discourse cannot be overstated. The level of good this man has done to breaking the corporate media paradigm cannot be overstated. The level of good this man has done into articulating a different aesthetic to America First that is more intellectual and takes away from the media the idea that America First is this primitivist, parochial, provincialist movement that is idiotic. It has been amazing. The level of good he has done in exposing people like Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis for who they actually are and who their handlers are has been absolutely amazing. The level of good Vivek has been as a contributing force of this race has been amazing. And in my opinion, if we were judging that as a metric of who won, then he absolutely did win. But unfortunately, it's just not enough to translate into political victory, because political victory requires a bunch of different things. Political victory requires money, which he had, but it also requires name recognition. It also requires you to break the barrier of mediocre political thinking. The moment someone sees a poll and they see someone 50 or 40 or 20 points ahead of you, no matter what you do, no matter how much campaigning you do, there's already a bind on their mind. Their potential has been snuffed out by this external force. And that's a sad indictment of where we are as a nation in terms of our political thinking. But it's a hard reality that Ron Paul had to contend with, that a lot of people had to contend with, and now Vivek is having to contend with it. So it's bittersweet, and I can announce, not that it doesn't mean much, but I am 110% on board with Donald Trump. I am 100% on board with ensuring that he becomes the next president, because I don't trust anybody else. And quite frankly, I don't think America can gamble with anybody else. So that's who my loyalties lie with right now. And of course, but again, it's to the ideas, not to the person. But Trump is the vessel for the ideas. I think at least the best form of those ideas that we have in our current society. And so I think that anyone who was on the Vivek train should now be on the Trump train if they really want to help America survive this.
Agreed. Brent?
Well, I think that's, I think most of Vivek's support will go to Trump, and so when you add those numbers together, it does look very strong. At least if you, look coming out of Iowa, it's upwards of 60% of the Republican faction is behind the American First agenda, with, that odd 40% being like, misled by the Pied Pipers, or actually just Democrats that want to wear an R for some reason. You could call them conservative or Republican liberals. But yeah, it's great to see. Like, I'm glad he sort of bowed out and admitted, that the reality, like it tracks with, where else Vivek has been with, objectively paying attention to reality, monitoring it, accepting the feedback, and then, go riding with it. So it's good to see that he's jumped behind Team Trump. That's good. And I think that's exactly where we have to go. He's the only one that really has the gravitas, has the gravity well in order to get enough support behind him. He could have kingmaked. This is something I wish he would have done in the before time, but Trump has an ego, so there's no way. I wish he would have just, chose somebody else to be the vessel and stayed out of it. And that way, all of their lawfare shenanigans really wouldn't have mattered so much. But, here's where we're at. And so going forward, we're just going to have to see what happens with Trump. And, you know, we know that if he does get back into power, the establishment is going to have a collective aneurysm, the likes of which we have never seen.
Agreed.
You know? And if they pulled COVID 1.0, you know, to make sure that Trump got out of power the first time, like, imagine the shenanigans that are going to ensue next year just to make Trump look bad. And, you know, he can't even win a further re-election. So there's really nothing that they have to worry about. He only gets 4 years, but they've already convinced themselves that if he gets back into power, that's the end of the country and there'll be no more elections and all this crazy hysterical nonsense. Like Whoopi Goldberg was just on The View, telling their, you know, millions of viewers that if Trump gets back into office, it's the end of America and there will be no more elections. And, you know, and this is what he says. He's very open about this. It's just like, Whoopi, you are the last person that should be having an audience. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, this is, I mean, I've been supporting Trump for a long time with the understanding, and I think everyone here is mature enough to recognize he is flawed. There are things about him that absolutely make you crazy. There are things he does that you just smack your forehead and go, oh, yeah, why? But on the other hand, it's like, you know, to go back to the Lincoln analogy, you know, get whatever he's drinking and send a barrel of it to all my generals. He fights. And that right now, I think the American people, or a significant portion of the population, is looking for, is somebody willing to stand up and fight for their values. And, you know, to go to Brent's point, if he does win re-election, then there is a legitimate reason why the establishment, the uniparty, ought to fear, because keep in mind, he has nothing to lose. There's no more elections for him. He's got 4 years to implement his agenda, and he doesn't have to worry about political consideration. He doesn't have to worry about the next election. He doesn't have to worry about anything else. He just has to worry about, I got 4 years, get out of my way. I'm going to get it done. And that thought has got to terrify the deep state. In all reality. So this is the first night of a lot of fun to come. So it is 11:35 Eastern. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up with that. I want to thank my panelists tonight: Reuben Christopher Haynes, Christian Watson, Brentley from the Dangerous Rhetoric Podcast, Chad Manley. You guys have been absolutely fantastic. I mean, it's always fun having you on the channel, regardless of under the circumstances under which we do it. But tonight was extra special, as this is the first time this channel has done something like this. We're going to be back next Tuesday night covering New Hampshire. Now, Brent, Christian, I didn't ask you about this, but if you're available and want to do it tomorrow, and the only reason I didn't ask is I just didn't know your schedule and I didn't want to do it to you shorthanded. But, you know, Reuben and I are doing a post-Iowa wrap-up stream from noon to 2. If you want to pop in, glad to have you. Let me know. I'll throw out the link. If you can't do it, I understand, because I'm letting you know on short notice, and I wasn't trying to exclude you from it. I just, like I said, I didn't know what your schedules were like. But if you guys want in tomorrow, we're glad to have you. I mean, you know, and you might be like, good God, I spent 3.5 hours with this idiot. I'm not going to spend any more time with him until next week. But if you want in, we're glad to have you. But I mean, regardless, you know, next Tuesday night, yeah, we're going to do this again. And like I say, you never know who's going to stop by. So on behalf of everybody, thank you for stopping in tonight. Like I said, tomorrow, Reuben and I, and maybe Brent and Christian will be able to do if they're able to join us, we'll be doing a post Iowa wrap-up stream, reactions, comments, thoughts, etc., from noon to 2. And for sure, we're back on the air next Tuesday night. Just speaking for my channel, this Thursday night at 6:30 Eastern, I am doing a session of Chatting on the Porch, and I'm interviewing Gothics. So
nice.
Feel free to stop by.
An old friend. Yeah.
A very
Love
cool
Gothics.
Yes. So gentlemen, before we wrap it up, Christian, I'll start with you. Where can people find you on social media? Where can they follow you? How best can they support your efforts?
Well, first, I just want to say thank you so much, Front Porch, for having me. I'm always, you know, the more I do these live streams, because most of the time it's just me with my camera streaming. at the world. But the more I do these live streams, the more I realize just how much I love doing content creation. And because 4 hours went by and I'm still hyped up on adrenaline. I don't even feel tired. And that's how much, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And I believe that 110%. So thank you for giving me this chance and this option to do this. And I'll definitely be joining more live streams. If folks want to find me, I am on several places. I'm on X at official C Watson. I'm on Twitter. That is X, excuse me. I'm on YouTube, which is going to be just type in Christian Watson politics, because if you don't just type in my name, a football player comes up and I don't know him, and I'm going to talk to him one day about that. That's going to be a point of contention between me and him. But just type in Christian Watson politics or pensive politics, and you can find me easily there. And that's pretty much about it. You can go to my website, christianjwatson.com, if you want to get in touch with me. Thank you guys so much for having me, and it's been a great time, and I can't wait to do it more.
Absolutely. Brent, where can people find you on social media?
Oh, so many places. On X, I'm at Kapopolis, which is over here somewhere. Yeah, right there-ish. Yeah, there. That's how you spell it. And you can find me on Instagram. It's Brentley, all one word. On TikTok now, I'm on the @DangerousRhetoric account because it's Brentley got nuked. YouTube is Dangerous Rhetoric is the podcast. Spotify, Dangerous Rhetoric. I think that's about everywhere. Yeah, we just had a new episode with Caitlin Copenhaver. She's an independent artist. She did a lot of work around the Epstein thing, so we had a whole show about the Epstein documents that came out. We talked about the backstory there, some of the infamous people that were involved in the cover-up, like Bill Barr, who was Trump's attorney general. Yep. So that was a lot of fun. But that's the podcast. And then on Rumble, we have our group live streams that are going to be Sunday nights, 7 p.m. Eastern. Y'all are always welcome to come join in. Just send me a DM. I'll send you the link. It's much like this, except a little bit more crazier, and we take our shirts off.
Yeah, I know, Reuben. Nudity on Rumble. What are you going to do? I mean,
you don't have to. You don't have to.
These kids these days, I tell you, Reuben, it's just awful. No, having been a part of the Sunday Night Supper Club, for those of you who have never seen it, you need to tune in because there's a lot of reasons why I love Brent and Daniel, but one of them is their fierce commitment to freedom of speech. And if it means they're just on Rumble, and believe me, it is a good time because free speech is alive and well on that platform. So, but yeah, check Brent out, check Christian out. Reuben, I'll throw it to you. Where can people find you on social media? How can they best support you?
Oh, find me everywhere. My name, Reuben Christopher Haynes. I use my real name because I consider myself the John Hancock of the new century. I don't really care because, again, I have no fear. I'm here to make a difference. I believe in America, and it is America first for me. It's always been that way since I've been growing up. I love politics. I love the debate. And that's what I want. I want a real debate. If it's somebody who opposes Trump has an honest conversation with me, I want to have that. So I'm on X, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on YouTube, I'm on Rumble. I'll be doing more on Rumble and more on X this year. It's been going through a lot. I've been on a healing journey myself. Last year, I lost 250 pounds of tumors that have eradicated my body through an autoimmune condition that's very rare, but I have bounced back, and I am bouncing back because I believe in a better tomorrow. I believe in love and joy and happiness, and that's what's the most important thing. And to have love and come into my life and to be part of it, it's the most important thing. So I'm going to spread love, joy, and happiness, and making America great again. And that doesn't mean anything bad. It's a very simple thing because in order to make America great again, do good things, be part of the world, and have more children. We need more children in the world to be raised by loving parents. And that's what I'm going to be doing. That's part of my mission in life. And I want to love my children, love my wife, and have great things. I lost my wife back in 2019. She was my first love, and now I have new love and new life, a new lease on life to live again and to be glorious to God and everything like that. So that's where I am. Thank you.
Gentlemen, again, thank you very much for everybody who's been watching tonight on YouTube, on Rumble, on Twitter. We are so glad you've been here. My name is Brian Trippett. I go by the handle The Front Porch Conservative. You can find me on YouTube, on Rumble. Just type in The Front Porch Conservative. You can find me on Twitter at The Front Porch C1. I'm on Gettr. I'm on Truth Social at The Front Porch Conservative. Thank you so very much for joining us tonight for our live stream coverage of the Iowa Caucus. This is a first of its kind event for my channel and for everybody who's been here to make this such a enormous success. Bless your hearts, and I mean that in the best Southern way possible. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Hang around for just one quick second. We'll say some proper goodbyes. Folks, we will see you tomorrow at noon. Reuben and I, hopefully Brent and Christian, but if not, I understand. Again, thank you so much, and we'll see you.